Hello everyone, welcome back to the Lichess broadcast commentary of the Uzbekistan Chess Cup 2024. I'm your host Irene Sukandar, and it is always a pleasure to lead the commentary for the Lichess community. And yesterday we had quite a round for the first round, and in the master section we had two decisive results. Sarana and Abdusattorov, they emerged as the only winners of the master sections yesterday, and today we will be resuming for round number 2, and I believe today is going to be as exciting as yesterday. And without further ado, let's also update ourselves of the players in the master section. Abdusattorov Nodirbak is the first seed of the master section, followed by Mamedyarov Shakhriyar from Azerbaijan and Parham Maksudlu. And in the master sections, it is only for 2700 and above, although we have two wild cards, that's for Sindarov Javokir and Yakubov Nodirbak. Sindarov already passed 2700 before just now. His recent rating is below 2700, but these two players are surely not to be underestimated. And the schedule is always the same. Every single day we are going to play at 3 p.m. Tashkent time, and until the last day. And for the standings, as I mentioned yesterday, only Alexei Sarana and Abdusattorov who won the game. Yuyangi, Richard Rapport, Fidit, Shahriar Mamedyarov, Nodirbak Yakuboyev, and Sindarov, they are sharing the third place with half a point. And unfortunately yesterday, Grishchuk and Parham Maksudlu had to suffer the loss against Sarana and Abdusattorov respectively. And today's pairings, I believe every single day it's going to be very, very interesting, because these players will offer us quite an entertainment on and off the board. And we have today Sarana Alexei versus Parham Maksudlu. So yesterday Sarana won the game and Parham lost, and on the second board we will have Mamedyarov Shahriar versus Nodirbak Abdusattorov, Yakuboyev Nodirbak versus Fidit, and Sindarov versus Rapport, and Grishchuk versus Yuyangi. Alright, and as usual, the format of the tournament is a round-robin event with 10 players and 9 rounds, and they will be playing a standard time control, 90 minutes plus 30 seconds increment per move. And when they completed the move 40, on move 41 they will have an additional 30 minutes until the rest of the game. And without further ado, let's dive in straight to the game. And let's take a look board number 1. It's between Mamedyarov Shahriar versus Abdusattorov Nodirbak. And here we see the Queen's Gambit accepted already on the board. And let's take a look from the start. D4, D5, C4, D takes C4, Knight F3, Knight F6, and E3, E6, Bishop takes C4, A6, and castles. Alright, so far it's still pretty normal. I believe both players are still trying to choose which variation they're going to play. Bishop E7 is already on the board. So yesterday Abdusattorov won a very beautiful game against Parham Maksudlu. If you missed yesterday's action, please do check it out. On our broadcast page, you can always see all the rounds that's already passed before. And Queen E2 is already on the board, followed by B5. Now, where does the bishop go? Bishop B3 or Bishop D3. They are offering different nuances in the game. And here Mamedyarov chose to play Bishop D3, and Abdusattorov immediately replied with Knight BD7. So in the master section, I can talk forever about every single player there, but what I just want to also emphasize is the prize sum of the event is so big, $166,000 for 3 sections: Masters, Challengers, and Futures. And in the Master section itself, even if you emerge as the last place in the section, you still get 5,000 US dollars. Where else can you get such a prize? So it's yeah, it's a totally big event, and this is their first edition. I'm just hoping that they will keep continuing organizing such a tournament like this, because it is very interesting for all the chess lovers to watch and also to enjoy the games. And here Rook D1 is already on the board. So far it's still within the theory book, and if I put my Master Lichess database, I'm sure I'll find lots of games like this. So c5 was being played before, and bishop b7. So this is still pretty much what we know in the Queen's Gambit Accepted. You want to play c5 at some point, because you have to try to counter the center, and c5 is the way to go. And Rook d1 here, it has the purpose to try to hinder you to play c5, because it looks straight to the queen on d8. So, well, it is a question now whether Abdusattorov is going to play c5 right away, or he's going to delay it by playing bishop d7. My apologies. And there also, I'm not sure if castle is the right continuation here, because it might be a bit too late to play later, because, well, Rook d1 followed by e4 and then e5, I think, and also knight c3, or maybe a4 first. So this is quite a position to ponder about, because well, the thing about Queen's Gambit Accepted is most of the position looks very similar, but they offer kind of like different things there. So you have to be very detailed and very careful in choosing your variation. All right, let's move on to board number 2 between Parham Maghsoodloo, Savarna versus Parham Maghsoodloo. So it means that Parham is having 2 blacks in a row, because yesterday he also playing as black pieces against Abdusattorov, and today he's playing against Savarna. So d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, and bishop b4. We see a Nimzo Indian here, and knight f3. And as we can see the live feed, Parham is still trying to choose which variation he's going to play, and there are so many variations here that black can choose from. He can play b6, he can play c5, he can play d5, he can castle. What else can he play? Okay, some sideline maybe like knight e4 is also there. So it would be depending on whether he is prepared to play the main line, or he is more like, oh, I'm going to try to throw my opponents off of the preparation and then just try to play some sideline, which is very, very trendy these days too. Like most of the elite players these days, they are exploring the unusual variations that the opponents might actually miss, so they just want to catch them by surprise. Well, we'll see. It's still move number 4. It's still a long way to go, and meanwhile, let's take a look on board number 3 between Yakuboyev versus Fidit. And unfortunately for board 3, we don't have the live feed yet. We are still working on it, so you might be just stuck with me. Alright, let's see it from the start. So Yakuboyev started with d4, d5, c4, d takes c4, another Queen's Gambit Accepted, and e4, b5. But this one is a more like a central variation with e4. Meanwhile, in the game between Namatyar versus Abdusattorov, we see the position with e2, e3, not e4. So this will offer a more open position in the game. So let's take a look. a4, c6, ab, cb, and yeah, this happens. The difference is actually, and this is a very common mistake as well for the beginners, and also maybe if you're playing bullet, there's a difference between e3 and e4 if your opponent is playing c6 like this. So let's just imagine that this pawn is on e3. If the pawn is on e3, black is not able to play this variation with c6 and takes on b5, because let's take a look from the start. If d4, d5, c4 takes, and then not e4 but e3, and then in this position you play b5, and then let's just copy what happened in the game as if this was the same position. So after b5, a4, and then c6, takes. The difference is in this position, white has queen f3, and it's GG because the rook is not able to be protected. It cannot go anywhere, and white just wins on the spot. So the difference is very subtle. It's just one move different, but it changes the whole thing. So that's why after e4, fitted, okay, this is the e4 variation. You totally can play this variation b5 because there is no longer queen f3 attack, just like what we saw before. And after a4, c6, takes, and b3. So I'm not too familiar with this variation. I'm more like an e3 player, and then try to play a more solid regrouping format for my pieces as white, and then slowly castle, and then play in the center, and so on. So this one is going to be very interesting indeed, because for now white is sacrificing a pawn, but this variation has been known for many years, and it will offer lots of edges. For example, white will be playing on the center. It will be opening the queen side, but at the same time, black is also trying to black has a pawn up, and black is trying to prove that the pawn means something. So e5 is already on the board, and in this position, if you play d5, this might just be the perfect time for black to play bishop b4, and then try to develop the knight as well, and castle as soon as possible. So we'll see what Yakuboev will do in this position. I just want to see my master Lichess database on how to deal in this position. So the most popular move is knight f3 here. And the second most popular move is actually d takes e5. So offering the queen's exchange as early as move 7. Well, and also d5 is actually the third most popular move, followed by b takes c4. Alright, so it means white is spoiled with choices here. And again, I think Yakuboev is still trying to think which variation that he's gonna play. And I think meanwhile we can also switch to board number 4. It's between Sindarov versus Richard Rapport. And okay, and I think I will switch back the live feed for board number 4, because it's kind of like switch before, yeah. Alright, so let's take a look from the start first. e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, cd4, knight d4, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6, bishop c4, and queen b6. Okay, this has gone a little bit out of style, this classical variation, especially with the bishop c4. Most players these days, they go for the main line with bishop g5, or you go for this like type of f3, bishop e3, this type of attack where you try to f3, bishop e3, queen d2, where you try to castle alongside and then try to attack on the king side. But this hasn't happened yet. Oh, this hasn't happened actually. This is not happening. Sindarov chose to play the bishop c4 variation, probably hoping to transpose it to Schwenningen by playing e6, something like that. But here, Richard Rapport played queen b6, and knight b5 is already on the board. So this knight b5 is kind of inviting a6 to be played, but at the same time, after a6, bishop e3 is there, and queen has to go back to d8, and maybe this knight will come back again to d4. It's just a way to reroute the pieces maybe. And let me see if I can just change the camera for that one, because we've been working on some of the live feeds before the stream, and apparently it's been fixed. And let's see. Yeah, so Okay, bear with me. And let's move to board 5. Yes, so on board 5 we have Grischuk versus Yang. So yesterday Grischuk suffered a loss against Sarana. The move bishop a3 in the end. It was such a beautiful move to seal the deal. And Yang actually yesterday had a very interesting game against Sindarov where he was up on the clock for many moves, but somehow he messed it up and he could only settle for a draw. And today Grischuk is playing against Yang, and apparently after 3 moves we're already seeing a London on the board. And here we can see from the live feed that Grischuk is still trying to think what variation that he's gonna play to continue this London. Okay, let me check something. And on our broadcast we are focusing on the master section. Well, in total there are 15 boards, 5 for each section, 5 masters, 5 challengers, and 5 futures. And in the master section there's already guaranteed prize who is not going to be in the top 3 winners. They are going to get like $5,000. In the challengers, if you're not in the top 3 winners, you still get like $2,000. I don't know yet about the future. I mean for the future section, but that's what I know on the masters and challenger section. Okay, let's move back to the first board maybe, because there might be some development on that board. So what's happening is after rook d1, yeah, Abdusattorov decided to delay the c5 by playing bishop b7, a4, and castle. So he's thinking that it's not the right time to do it yet. And what is just happening here? He kind of like sacrificing a pawn on b5. So what's happening after ab? I think it's ab takes this, and maybe you take with the queen, and bishop takes this. And I believe black has some sort of a compensation here. Black is sacrificing a pawn, but in return black has like a more active pieces on the queen side, and also this queen and bishop battery aiming toward g2, making the knight a little bit paralyzed on f3. So are we going to see this variation? Because again, have I seen this variation before? I don't think so. I don't think so. So this might be just what Abdusattorov had prepared beforehand, because we can also see from the live feed that Mamedyarov is thinking. Maybe he also, you know, a bit perplexed on how to deal with this sacrifice on b5. It looks like it's a yummy pawn to take, and then he just took it. So ab5 is already on the board, and we can expect that ab5 is also going to happen, because I don't think any other move will make it better. a5, I don't think so, because it's just then a free pawn without any compensation. So ab5 is already on the board as well, followed by rook a8, and I believe so Abdusattorov will take it with the queen. It's just making sense to take it with the queen instead of with the bishop. And I think he just did it from the live feed. Yes, he just did it, and bishop takes b5. So this is what we are currently seeing right now on the board between Mamedyarov versus Abdusattorov. And okay, let's figure it out. Like, how are we going to make our sacrifice worth it? Because a pawn is a pawn. We've seen similar idea also in Catalan as black too, actually, where black sacrificed a pawn in order to have a better queen side as a compensation. So this is going to be instructive. I'm also going to learn how to deal in this position because usually my main approach in the Queen's Gambit Accepted is just that at some point I have to play c5, but without sacrificing anything. But in this position, in this game, Abdusattorov decided to play c5 right now after sacrificing a pawn. So yeah, I'm still figuring out what makes it different. So in the end, this b2 pawn will be the pass pawn, and this will be the extra pawn that white has. The question is whether white will be able to use it, because if you have an extra pawn and then you are not able to use it, then it's as if you don't have any advantage at all. So c5 is now on the board. Obviously white has a few options here. White can just take on c5, but white can also just not take. So if white doesn't take, maybe it's just the time to develop the pieces. But after cd, you cannot take it with the knight because g2 is hanging. So if you take it with the rook, does it give time for the knight to go? Maybe knight b6, knight c5. Oh, knight c5 is good because it's aiming knight b3. So well, it's not the end of the world for white. I mean, it's still a game, but it's just I'm trying to make sense of this this move, because if c5 you take, it's kind of like helping your opponent to improve the pieces. So you shouldn't do that, because after this, I mean, black is getting whatever he wants. So maybe after c5, apart from knight c3, if we just ignore this pawn and then do something else, do we have any better move than knight c3? Because this bishop is still not activated, and yeah, this threat is a little bit unpleasant. So I think I would go for knight c3 here. Takes. Can we take it with the pawn so that this bishop can go? Maybe a pawn is better, yeah, so that the bishop can develop right away. So what do we do here? If the knight goes to b6, let's say, then let's move the bishop out like this. Or maybe, is it time to take this one yet? How do we assess this position? Is it okay for white? I think so. Yeah, actually, with the pawn down like this, you don't want to trade pieces. You want to keep all the pieces on the board. So okay, knight c3, I think it's a good move. And after takes this, you take with the pawn, and then you develop your bishop to g5. And probably after this, it is time to bring the rook. Maybe a rook d8. Yeah, something like this. You don't have to do anything, because all these squares, important squares on d5, e4, half of c4 is kind of controlled by black pieces. So black is standing fine despite having one pawn down. Yeah, so good preparation. Yeah, it's a good preparation. It's a little bit unexpected to sacrifice on this position, but yeah, the more I see it, the more I gain my understanding, then the more acceptable it is. Okay, let's see board number 2 between Sarana versus Parham. And oh, it looks like he's been choosing like kind of like the main line in this Nimza, but also a more quiet line. So let's take a look after, I think after knight f3. Yeah, we left it after knight f3, and here he chose b6. And yeah, b6 is one of the main lines as well. It's easy. You just want to play bishop b7, you fianchetto your bishop, and then try to control the center and yeah, pretty much having control over e4 square. And here Sarana played e3, castles, bishop d3, d5. Yeah, this d5 is kind of important right now because, or bishop b7 actually. I'm just trying to figure out what's the difference between bishop b7 and d5, because ultimately the purpose of those moves is to prevent e4, because this is what white wants to get. Just play e4, open up the position, and then trying to make use this diagonal for the bishop, and perhaps, you know, maybe there's some sacrifice on h7 followed by knight g5, the Greek gift, so it might happen. Yeah, so here Parham chose to play d5. Now I think I understand why he's not playing bishop b7, because there is also another idea in this position, that is to play bishop a6. And I remember I won quite a good game against Irene Crush in this position as black, where I played kind of like the similar opening. So here castles and rook e8. Rook e8 is a very tricky move because it looks like it doesn't attack anything because it's being blocked by the pawn on e6. But the idea of rook e8 is when a3 happens, you have this square for the bishop, and the bishop is just standing very nicely on f8, although it doesn't do anything yet at the moment, but this is actually the safest square for the bishop. If you are like me, if you always prefer a pair of bishop, this is actually a good variation for you to play instead of taking the knight on c3. I mean, this is also of course a playable position. It's just a matter of taste if you want to play this or not. But as for me, just trying to make sense of rook e8. Otherwise, there's better move than rook e8 if you just want to take on c3 after all. Alright, so rook e8 is the last move on the board, and now Sarana is still thinking on how to proceed in this position. One way is to take on d5. Another way is also to play bishop d2. I don't think he will play a3 because rook e8 is already setting things up for the bishop on f8 anyway, so it's time to develop the pieces. But the main thing about bishop d2, which I don't like, is it allows bishop a6 and pinning this pawn. So the bishop on d3 is unprotected and you cannot take d5. So what to do then? Because after rook e8, could it be queen b3, this type of moves, you know, not the main line, but yeah, if you want to solve everything, you just take on d5 actually. But the good thing about rook e8 is also it's setting up the control over the e4 square. So after cd, black will take with the e pawn, and yeah, and now at some point there are so many ideas where the knight goes to e4 and then play in the center like that. So apart from those two moves, what can we do? Queen b3? Queen b3 maybe? Yeah, queen b3, you can play bishop f8. You kind of have to calculate if you can play c5 in this position actually, because this is also kind of quite common move to make, that you want to attack the center and at the same time you're protecting the bishop. But it means if you play c5, you have to resort to, or maybe you don't have to. I thought black has to take, but after a3, maybe you can still go bishop a5, although I have a sense that eventually black will take c3 with the bishop, but it would be depending on what Sarana does on this particular moment. And let's move back to the game between Sindarov versus Richard Rapport, because out of all the 5 games in the master section, this is the only Sicilian. And if you've been following my commentary, I'm always down to commentate any Sicilian game, because it is going to get us quite a very interesting game. So we see the position of the knight db5, and indeed here Richard Rapport play a6, attacking the knight, and it is just the right time for the bishop to develop to e3. And instead of queen d8, which I thought it's going to be the only move, there is queen a5. why didn't I think about this move? Maybe because I was worried the queen might be trapped, but apparently it's fine. So knight goes to d4 back, and after e6, f3. This might be just the transposition that we're going to see with the queen d2 idea and then g4 castle, although white has quite an option too. White doesn't need to just long castle, but white can also resort to the short side castle. So it is quite flexible now, and it seems to me that the queen has wasted a few tempi here. I don't know whether it is punishable or not, because after f3 I really want to make b5 work, but of course knight c6 is hanging. So does it mean black has to play bishop d7 here? And yeah, I mean this is the common drill. Yeah, you want to play b5 or rook c8 and maybe put the queen back to c7 at some point and play bishop e7, things like that. So I don't see any drawback with bishop d7 actually. And now maybe after bishop d7, queen can go to d2, and maybe bishop e7 is always a move that you will have to make in the end, whether it is now or later. So what else can we do here? Oh yeah, we have a 15-minute delay in the broadcast. It's for the anti-cheating measures. I'm showing, or I'm actually seeing the moves in real time, but it's only broadcasting to you guys 15 minutes later. So unfortunately that means I cannot really interact with the chat, and even though I address your question, you can only see it 15 minutes later. So sorry about that, but we are prioritizing the anti-cheating measures. Alright, so still no move yet from Rapport on this position. And let's quickly take a look what's happening between Grischuk versus Yu Yangyi. And here, alright, so not many moves yet actually. It's still, I think the last position was this one, and Grischuk chose to play knight d2, bishop e7, and c3, still the normal position. And yeah, the thing about London is there are still so many options that both white can play and black can play. So for example, in this position, I don't know, like there's so many, like for example, b6 is a move, castles is a move, d6 or even d5, both are okay. Knight c6 is also a move. So I think it would be depending what sort of position that Yu Yangyi is going after in this position, because all of these moves, they are very normal moves and totally you can play them. And do we have updates on the game between Yakuboev versus Fidit? Oh, after e5, this is what we saw. Yeah, this is what we saw, and Yakuboev chose this line, d takes e5. So what's gonna happen? Let's say, yeah, I have no clue. Okay, so the most favorite move in this position, or the most played move, is queen takes d1, and of course king has to take. And after that, you play knight c6, like this. Okay, and white can play two moves here, knight c3 or b takes c4. Okay, this is going to be quite a mess. If takes here, what to do? b4, and then you are still attacking this, and after knight f3, I mean there should be some compensation or anything like that, right? Oh, okay, d takes e5. I'm just gonna check if they already, I want to see the live feed as well, if they already fix it. It's gonna be interesting to see how the players are thinking. Sometimes you can tell one thing or two from their gestures, from their body language, whether they're enjoying the position or they're suffering. And I still don't have anything yet. on board 3. So let's continue on which board are we going to see. I will put the position on board 2. And yeah, after rook e8, yeah, Sarana still hasn't played yet. And meanwhile, let's take a look at the games as well. Do we have okay, in the challenges section, we also have plenty of interesting players. Oh my gosh, I think we have to see this game. It's between Romanov, Evgeny versus Donchenko. Wait until I surprise you with the position of their game, guys. Take a look. This is from the challenges section. I don't know what opening this was. We're gonna restart the game, of course, but do I understand anything on this position? Let's take a look. It's coming from a Sicilian. So e4 c5, knight f3 d6, takes, and f3, e5 and knight b3, okay, and d5. Alright, and then c3 here, takes, bishop d2, knight e4. Alright, so I must be living on other planets if this is a common knowledge in this Sicilian, because I didn't know and I haven't seen it before. But apparently it has been played quite a lot of time by many players. Okay, there's always something to learn every day, right? So this is the nice thing about commentating the games. It's not only that you are watching the game, but there's always something new that you haven't known before, and then somehow you knew. So nice. So let's see the game. Knight e4, bishop b4, queen h4 check, g3 takes, and takes h1, bishop c5 and b6. Wait, what is going on? Why bishop c5? I mean, if you want to stop the king from castling, bishop a3 would suffice. But you allow b6, probably trying... What are you trying to provoke here? Because I was thinking b6 might be weakening the knight on c6, but since the bishop is pinned, the bishop cannot go to b5. Yeah, it's a curious case for me now. Okay, is bishop c5 a common move in this position? It is. It is. And the most common move to play in this position as black is bishop h3, which after bishop h3 it allows knight 1d2, and then you just castle like this. Wow, this is nice. But black didn't play that. Black chose to play b6 instead of bishop h3, and Romanov replied it right away with d5. And if you just take a look at the time situation, guys, Romanov still has 1 hour and 31 minutes, while Donchenko is down to 1 hour and 4 minutes. So yeah, it's telling something that it is still within Romanov's preparation. So yeah, I'm giving you the view of all the games there on the video. Okay, let's take a look at what are the boards again. Let's circle back to the master section first, and then after we circle around from the first to the fifth board, and I can always try to take a look if there's any interesting game happening on the challengers, and yeah, we can take a look there. So let's come back to the game between Mehmet Yarov versus Abdusattorov here. So what's happening was after c5, yes, Mehmet Yarov played knight c3, and here Abdusattorov took d4, e takes d4, and rook d8. So yeah, the rook has to come anyway, with or without knight b6. So this is quite understandable. That it's I'm trying to understand this, and it's getting easier right now. But the difference is between me and Abdusattorov, I have to figure it out on the board, right? I have to figure it out on the board. I don't have prior knowledge about this. I didn't prepare this at all. But as a commentator, of course, I've seen so many things that very unfamiliar to my play or to my own knowledge. But it's always a good thing. We always learn something. So rook d8 is on the board. Where does the knight go? Eventually this knight d7 will have to go. I assume it's gonna be knight b6 to d5, something like that. But the play by Abdusattorov playing rook d8, it gives this knight some flexibility. I don't know whether the knight will go to f8 and g6. Maybe this is also another idea that can be employed. And well, even though Mamedyarov has been playing quite fast, given he got caught by surprise, I think the position is still going to offer some dynamic outcomes here. It's still a 3-result game. And bear in mind, white is still up a pawn, and black is trying to, I don't know, maybe regain the pawn back or trying to get some compensation out of it. So it's always up in the air. And what about the second board between Sarana versus Parham Maksudlu? Oh, knight e5. So we saw the position after rook e8. I didn't realize knight e5 was another candidate move. The trick is, in this position, it stops knight bd7. Just imagine if this happens on the board. I'll be going out of my chair because suddenly there is knight c6 and GG. The queen is trapped on d8, and this might be just the shortest game in the tournament. But I can be assured, this not gonna happen. The other knight though is better. Yeah, if you want to exchange the knight, then the other knight on f is better to go to d7, not the one on d8. So, but this is just a joke. And okay, on the serious note, let's figure things out. How to continue with black in this position? Do we play bishop a6? Do we play bishop b7? Knight e5. Knight e5. I think Sarana has also an idea to play f4 at some future, because this is, if you put the knight on e5 like that, you'd like to protect it more with your pawns like d4 and f4. Okay, so knight e5. Yeah, on the live feed we see that Parham is still pondering about it. I like bishop a6 actually, because if we want to keep being consistent with the original idea, knight e6 might be just a move. But yeah, in this position you have to be aware that there is a queen a4, and this is also the thing that might happen. Although yeah, after queen a4 you are not forced to take this. Yeah, I think you can just go to f8 like that, and oh, bishop d6. Sorry, what happened after bishop d6 and attacking the knight like that? Yeah, maybe this is it. So after knight e5, bishop a6 is an idea. It is an option. If you want to play a bit slower, you can play bishop b7 too. I think there's no problem at all with bishop b7. Again, you may or may not take c3, or you may or may not play bishop f8 followed by c5. Still the common reaction to this position. Let's see other games too. So in challengers, that game Romanov versus Donchenko is very interesting. What else can we see from other games? I see a potentially interesting game between Soleimani Aydin versus Fakidov in the challenger section. So we can dive right in. Let me check here. Okay, I got it. Soleimani Aydin is a very young Azeri player. He's kind of like a prodigy, and yeah, from the current position, it looks like White is attacking. The king on h7 is kind of lonely. It's alone and lonely. So somehow it feels like it's a bit loose, isn't it? That it can easily get attacked by any of the major pieces. So I assume this is coming from a Rossolimo or something, judging from the pawn structure. Let's take a look. e4 c5, yes, so Rossolimo it is. And after e6 takes c6, takes c6 and d3. And queen c7 castles, knight e7, h4. So yeah, this is actually a common theme as well. Like whenever the knight goes to e7, it wants to go to g6, not here, but g6. So you want to play h4 in order to hinder the knight to go to g6, because there's always h5. So d6 first, and now h5 and e5. So now the problem for black is how to arrange the pieces, especially the bishop on f8. And after knight h2, h6, f4 takes f4, bishop takes f4 and g5. Phew, g5. It's very brave, isn't it? It's so brave. Like, okay, first of all, f4. I don't think you have any other option but taking the pawn, right? Takes and g5. And you don't en passant? What's wrong with en passant? Hey, what's wrong with this position, right? Is this a common variation as well? No game found on my master chess database. But alright, bishop d2, so he didn't en passant the pawn. And after bishop g7, bishop c3. Okay, this is understandable, because that bishop on g7 might be like the best defensive piece for the black's king in the future. So you just want to get it exchanged. And after castle, takes and queen d2. And after here, give a check and developing the knight and developing the rook, and this is the current position. Alright, so black has to be careful in this position not to lose on the spot. And by the way, yesterday Fakidov Jahongir played a really nice endgame against Mustafa Yilmaz from Turkey, and if you miss the game, please do check it out, because the endgame, the rook endgame, was very instructive. And I think they played almost more than 5 hours yesterday. So yeah, but unfortunately in our broadcast we have a 15-minute delay, and I'll be focusing mainly on the master section. So this is still what's happening right now. I have to switch back the video feed actually. The futures camera is not, I mean the challenges camera is not that one. Let me check if they already fixed it. Okay. Alright, meanwhile, let's take a look on board 5, because I see there Yu Yangyi is thinking, and h3 is on the board. Yeah, this game has been moving quite slowly compared to other games that we're seeing. A lot of a lot of options for both white and black. So h3, I think Krischuk is aiming to play knight f3 because with this type of setup, the bishop might get exchanged if there is no h3 with knight h5 actually. So h3 is just kind of the preventive move after knight h5 so that the bishop can hide on h2. So yeah, what about the first board between knight g5? Knight g5 is on the board after rook d8, knight g5. What is going on? You want to sacrifice here. So this is a very direct idea by Mamedyarov, really, because, well, you just want to sacrifice on e6 and then trying to get this bishop. So for example, I'm just going to show you something. Like if h6, knight takes, queen check, and if the king moves anywhere else, then you just take the bishop on e7. So if the king moves to f8, and I think you can try to give a checkmate on f7 by playing bishop c4. So therefore, after knight g5, Abdusattorov just got it in time to play knight f8, stopping anything to do with e6 sacrifice. And after that, it's also just in time for Mamedyarov to play f3. So now the knight is already improved. The knight can play freely, and white doesn't have to worry anymore about the pawn on g2. But this leaves the position a little bit weakening for the pawn on d4. Well, it is an isolated pawn to begin with, but now with the inclusion of f3, I'm just worried there might be some funny thing about this type of position. Obviously not now, but something like this, yeah? Like trying to attack the king like that along this diagonal. But let's try to understand this in more detail. So if I start by playing queen a7, let's say, there is bishop e3. And what happens if I just try to exchange like this? Knight d5, and I'm attacking this and this. So if you take this one, I might be able to just take it with the rook. I mean, you can still go to knight e4, it's fine, but it's just looking funny on how things are going to unfold if this happens. And let's put more pressure on this, or actually put more pressure on this. I can play queen b6 or queen a5, but this bishop will just go to c4. So it's not a very tempting idea. So alright, so queen a7, bishop e3, knight d5, I think it's a good move. Knight takes d5, and maybe bishop just takes like this. This looks alright for black. I mean, okay, white is still up a pawn, but black has okay. So f3, even though it looks like it's solving one problem, but it creates another problem with this one. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on this, of course, because not only that Abdusattorov is leading the tournament, but he's also the first seed of the tournament. And we know that he's been accomplishing a lot in the past few years lately, and I think two of his notable achievements were being the World Rapid Champion, and also he won the gold medal in the Olympiad in Chennai 2022. So, and he's just, how old is he? I think he's just 19 or something like that. But he's been achieving a lot. Okay, any updates on the game between Sarana versus Parham? So after knight e5, bishop a6 indeed happened, but instead of queen a4 like what we saw before, Sarana chose to take on d5. So this might be just the position that we know actually. It takes d5, knight bishop takes a6. So in this position you have to take, and usually you play queen a4 here and then queen c8. So I think we're going to see this position on the board soon. And after like knight d3, oh actually not knight d3, after this bishop d2 is the move. And after bishop d2 it's usually, yeah, the knight will go back like queen b6, sorry, queen b7, rook c8, c6, something like that. So, oh, queen f4 is already on the board. Yeah, queen c8 will happening soon. This is quite a common variation in this setup, because, well, how else are you going to protect this? I don't think Parham will take c3, so queen c8 might be just the move. And here I think white has a few options. One of them is bishop d2, and also knight d3, and also a3, or I don't know if there is any new theory about this of other moves as well. Oh, another thing is bishop d2 is setting up for rook c1. This is very important because because black has also an additional idea to play c5 at some point. So I think it is important to play it right away because there's rook c1. If white plays something else, I'm not sure what white can play. I mean, after queen c8, yeah. Knight d3. Yeah, the thing with knight d3 is I think since the knight is kind of moving backward here, I think you can take, although it's not always a forced thing to do. You can always go to bishop d6 or bishop f8 like what you intend before. And yeah, I think bishop f8 is nice. Yeah, you just want to play c5 at the next move, or if you want to play c6, then you play queen b7, c6, and knight c7. Yeah, a little slow maneuvering moves around the queen side like that. Okay, oh, queen a4 happens, followed by queen c8, and bishop d2 is already on the board. Okay, now, if my memory serves correctly, you have to play queen b7 here, and although, is there anything else? Oh, knight b, no, knight b8 cannot be happening. It is an idea though, in the end, after the bishop on b4 kind of settled, like going to d6 or f8, and then you can play knight b8 and then maneuvering your knight, because there is nothing for the knight on a6 right now. But I think it's queen b7 first. It has to be queen b7 first, and then you just have to see what's coming next. And usually after queen b7, rook c1, and probably bishop f8 like this, because you have to be ready with knight here maybe, and putting the knight here. Okay, but in this position I think c5 is just in time. So okay, we're gonna see something like this, I'm very sure. And meanwhile, let's take a look at the game between Sundar versus Rapport, because we know, yeah, we left it in the position after bishop, no, actually after f3. I was thinking maybe it's the time for the bishop to move to d7, but Richard chose the other bishop, so bishop e7, bishop b3, and knight d7. Yeah. Yeah, this knight has to move at some point. But what is it? What's the purpose of this knight now? Could it be it's but bishop checks here just to provoke g3 and then back to e7? I mean, if you're commentating on Richard Rupert's game, it's always kind of unpredicted on what he's gonna do. He's too creative and original. And Sindarov is still thinking. Okay. Do we have any updates on the other board? So yeah, one thing that is still not moving is the game between Yakuboyev versus Fidit. Oh, the game is on. Okay, I can try to update it first. Bear with me. Alright, there you go. And there still hasn't been any move after d takes e5. And just take a look at the time situation. It's still on move 7, and both of them are still... I mean, it's more like Fidit is still thinking on how to deal with this d takes e5, yeah? Queen d1 is an idea, bishop b4. Yeah, it's always a challenge to remember everything that you've already known before. I believe Fidit has already learned this position before, but a player like him, he has so many repertoire, and also Yakuboyev is a very universal player. He can come up with any variation, so it's almost impossible or very hard to prepare your opponent before the tournament. Although you have to keep preparing anyway, but just to get your preparation right on the spot for the game, it's gonna be very hard. You just have to prepare the best that you can get and hoping that it works during the game. Okay, still no move yet from this game. Yeah, Fidit is still thinking so hard, and I guess I'll take my first break for now while we are fixing some of the video feed. So yeah, don't go anywhere because I'll be back after a few minutes. Hello, welcome back everyone to the Lichess broadcast commentary of the Uzbekistan Chess Cup 2024, and today we are watching round number 2 and we'll be focusing on the master section. And right now what we see on the board is the game between Mehmet Yarovsakriar versus Abdusattorov, and there have been some development on their game. So the last position we saw was f3, and in this position Abdusattorov chose to play h6, trying to kick the knight away, and after knight goes to e4, knight takes e4, and f takes e4. So in hindsight, it looks like white has a powerful center with 2 pawns on d4 and e4, but also at the same time, these type of pawns can be quite a double-edged pawns for white, as well as it can also be quite a weakness. So Abdusattorov chose to exchange the knight on the center like this, and now I'm still a bit feeling uneasy about the pawn on d4. But is there any way for black to exploit it? Because at some point or the other, black has to try to attack something, because if this keeps continuing on, and the endgame would be not so good for black, because black is currently down a pawn. So if we start by playing queen a7, I don't know why this is my favorite move. I always like to attack d4 like this. There's always bishop e3, and I think white solved the problem. So how are we going to continue this position then? Yeah, I need the knight to move again, because the knight doesn't do anything on f8. So maybe it's time for the knight to go to g6 and trying to do something, because yeah, the idea of sacrificing the pawn, it's still a bit vague for me. Like, what is black trying to go after? I know that black is trying to get some compensation for the pawn, but I'm trying to still looking for it. Alright, I think we can leave this for a while Abdusattorov is thinking hard on how to continue this position. We can move on to the second board between Sarana versus Parham, which is going according to our prediction. So after queen a4, queen c8 was played, and bishop d2, and here c5 immediately. So there are 2 options here. You can play queen b7, or you can continue just like what Parham did in the game, this direct attack with c5 and rook ac1. So eventually queen b7 has to be played, and maybe it is now the time to do it. But also on the other hand, this might be just also the time to play knight c7. So I guess Parham is still trying to think which one is the best. And let me think, if c4 is an option as well, because in many cases you would like to move c4 like this, and you have a majority pawns in the queen side. Is this an option? I'm trying to look if there is any sort of tactics, but maybe after c4 there's just b3, yeah, and you're trying to attack the c4 pawn like this, and this might be a bit uncomfortable for black. So maybe black shouldn't be so brave as to play c4, but instead of c4, let's try queen b7. Queen b7, and yeah, the idea is simple. You also want to play like, if, for example, if a3 happens, then bishop takes, and let's say bishop takes, and in this position I think now you can play b5 followed by c4, and at some point you have to reroute your knight, I don't know, maybe to b8 and then to d7 and a5, something like this. So that might be just the idea. So after queen b7, I guess you have to take like this, and then it would be depending on how you take it back. Like if you take this, then maybe a3, takes this, and hang on, I cannot take that one. Sorry, I forgot that the knight on e5 is hanging. I cannot take on c5. So after queen b7, maybe it's, yeah, what else can we do here? Knight d3 or f4? No, f4 just, no, I don't think it is f4. Yeah, probably the most common move is just a3, takes and takes like this, and then maybe just play this position like that. b5, and let's say queen c2, and then c4. Yeah, although I don't know who's better in this position. Probably black, because black has the majority pawns in the queen side. And then after rerouting this knight to anywhere, like here or here, and then a5, b4, and things like that. So that's, I think that's going to be quite a dream position for black if it happens. So yeah, after rook ac1, queen b7 then. Is there any other move? Knight d3 maybe? Knight d3, but takes like this, yeah. And after this, I think we're going to see a similar position. Okay. Parham is still thinking, so we can go to board 3 between Yakuboev versus Fidit. Finally, there's some move. After d takes e5 here, Fidit decided to give a check after how many minutes of thinking? 43 minutes of thinking. He finally decided to play bishop b4. Bishop d2 and bishop c5 and knight f3. Okay, now what do we know about this position? Knight f3, you'd like to, well, the idea is to stop queen here, yeah, because it is a double attack to f2 and to a1. That's why knight f3 was happening. So can black use the time now to attack f2 by playing queen b6 maybe? Or is it time to just move the knight to e7 and castle and play kind of like a normal position? Again, Fidit is thinking again right now. And yesterday he was quite in time trouble against Mamedyarov, but apparently he managed to survive. And in fact, when the game ended, Fidit's position was actually better, but I guess we can understand why he accepted the draw offer. It's because he's been in time trouble and maybe he just didn't want to risk it. So in this game, I think he's gonna be in time trouble again. It's still on move 9 right now, so Fidit still has to make another, well, 9 for white, so Fidit still has to make another 32 moves to get to the time control, and he has 44 minutes. Well, it's still a lot of time, 44 minutes, but if you're thinking for the long term, about the future, this actually, you know, this can go by a whisk. So it's yeah, he has to start playing faster, and this has been his, I don't know whether it is a weakness or just a habit, not only on this tournament but also in other tournaments, that he still has to work on his time management. And let's also see board 4 between Sukandar versus Rapport, because apparently after knight d7 here, Sindarov didn't try to play any risky move or anything. He just settled with castle and the position looks good for him. Everything is according to the opening principle. He's playing in the center, he already developed the pieces and he already castled, so it's looking good and he's ready to attack. And now it's up to Richard Rapport on how to continue this position, because white has all the flexibility that he wants in order to continue the game. So castling is already done, and now if black also mirroring white by also castling in this position, what's going to happen? Yeah, e6 is always in this type of structure. Sometimes there's some sacrifice on e6, but that is usually when the queen is on d8. Now the queen is on a5. It might be a different story. Maybe the sacrifice on e6 by these two minor pieces are not really working well. So we have to come up with something else then. What about queen d2? Because at some point you want to play knight c6. Oh, actually this is a very great example. So let's say in this position black played something oh, like this actually, rook d8. It looks like one of the Sicilian type of move, right? But this will be losing. Is it losing? Maybe it's just a bit uncomfortable. Like knight takes, and then here, and then queen takes, check here. Okay, then you might just have to play in the endgame. Actually, rook d8 isn't so stupid after all, because now the king can take on e7. So maybe to illustrate my idea, it has to be h6. So we can do the same, takes, and then knight here. You cannot take this one because of this. Check, and then you take the queen afterwards. But here you can actually play queen here. But this type of trade is always, I guess, preferable for white. And you can try to attack this, although there's d5, but yeah, there's always c4. Or takes and c4. Either way is fine. So castle, I don't think anything's wrong with castling. But after queen d2, I guess black has to be careful with this type of idea of knight d5. And I really want to make b5 work, so maybe it's time for the queen to move back like this so that b5 can happen. Although there's another trick in this type of structure. Again, let's say after queen here, I play a normal move like rook d1, yeah, and then you start playing b5, and then this is the trick. Actually, can I just play knight d5 first? Yeah, I can play knight d5 first, takes, and takes this one. Like this. Because after queen takes, bishop takes, and then you get to a8. So that might be just another trick. There's so many tricks in Sicilians, and most of them involving some tactics. So after castle here, Richard chose to play knight c5. And Sindarov just played f4 right away. So he expected this move of knight c5. And he's ready to play f4 and trying to attack. So he decided to give up the b3 bishop, but it's gonna cost Richard some time to also to move the queen afterwards, because if knight takes here, a, b, and then queen maybe has to go to c7, and now maybe it's just a time to play some idea like f5 and then attacking the king side like that. So not an easy position to play. But at the same time, usually in this type of Sicilian, of course, the bishop is a very strong bishop, so it is also very tempting to just exchange it with the knight. Okay, let's also see the fifth board between Grischuk versus Youngie. There have been some moves. We saw the position after, I think after after h3. Yeah, after h3 here, Youngie chose to play knight c6, followed by knight gf3, and then d5, bishop d3, and bishop d6. So just a few days ago, I was telling my student about this idea, that why black wasted a few tempi to play bishop from f8 to e7 and then to d6. So this is the idea, that you want to trade this bishop with this bishop only when the pawn is already moved to h3, because when the pawn is still on h2, the bishop can just go back to g3, and you don't want to take it on g3 because it will only opening the h file for the rook to attack the h7 pawn. So yeah, I think this is what Youngie is employing, this strategy in this game. He played bishop e7 first. The idea is to try to somehow attack this bishop on f4 by playing knight h5 in the future, and that's why c3 castle h3, because Grischuk want to play knight f3, and after playing knight f3, it will close the control of the queen over the h5 square, so the knight can go to h5. So that's why he played h3 first. And after knight c6, knight f3, d5, bishop d3, and now it is time to play bishop d6, because now if the bishop goes back to g3, then black can just take it, and then fg, and then it's going to be better for black. So here Grischuk didn't allow that to happen, and he chose to play knight e5 and queen c7, knight df3, and knight e4, and here castles. So we are seeing, well, apart from the bishop having, the bishop is on c8 compared to the bishop on f4, this almost looking like very symmetrical. And yeah, the idea is right now black is trying to figure out whether f6 is working in this position or not, or if any, I think like b6 also is an idea, bishop b7, like that. But ultimately I think you have to think about, or at least considering f6, because you just want to simplify things in the center, because the knight on e5 is standing or looking quite well there. You just have to try to disturb it. So if we do f6 here, what's gonna happen? My first instinct is to take c6, but after c6, then maybe bishop f4. And black is fine, I would say, because after this, I don't know how to take this one back. Maybe with the queen, or maybe with the pawn, or maybe just with the queen. Yeah, black should be standing fine. So what else can we see after f6? And f6 is already on the board. Wow, okay. So we are actually looking at the right position right now. f6 just happened. So how to get this knight away from e5? First is to take, and we just saw what happened after knight takes, bishop takes here. I feel black should be doing fine, or even a bit better. So apart from knight c6, where else can we go? To be honest, I don't see anything else. Yeah, I don't see anything else. If you do this, takes, and it is both knights that's under attack, and you have to try to save one of them actually, like this. And but then there's always this. If this one, then you can choose to take this, you can choose to take this. I think taking this is the finest one, because now the knight is trapped. Okay, is Grischuk in trouble? Oh, the other thing is, oh, the knight can go to c4. Yeah, knight can go to c4 because this knight on e4 is also hanging. So if bishop takes here, I can take like this, but this gives a pawn up for black, so I don't think this is gonna happen. It looks like Grischuk already played something, but I don't know what he did. I think we will have the game on the board very soon. Okay, no. Oh yeah, I think it's knight c6, because from the live feed I just saw that Yu Yangyi took the bishop on f4, so this might be the move. Yeah, so f6, knight takes c6, and then bishop takes f4. This might be just the move that they just played. Okay, and let me check if there are any interesting game in the challengers section. Ooh, let's go to the game between Predke versus Fokidov. This is too good. Let's do that. Look at the current position, guys. Bishop takes e6. I don't know how to feel about it. The king is gonna be under attack. Of course, the first move comes to mind is to take the bishop on e6, but isn't it scary? Let's take a look what's happening. So, the normal Nimzo Indian again. And okay, if you remember the game between Sarana versus Barham Maksudlu, in this position, Barham played b6, followed by rook e8 and so on. But here, Fokidov got a different approach. He took the pawn on c4, takes, and then c5. Castles and c takes d4, e takes d4, and b6. So he is playing against the isolate queen's pawn on d4, which is going to be always interesting and dangerous, because every player who's going to play with IQP like this, his intention is to attack, and it is very important for black to try to minimize the effect. So queen a4, bishop e7, bishop e3. Things are looking normal so far. White especially is just trying to get the pieces out. And bishop b7, knight e5. Yeah, because, well, if you don't do anything with that knight, the knight can be taken by the bishop. So e5 looks like a very good spot for the knight to be. So that's why knight e5. And after knight f d7, you just take on f7. So it's now a double sacrifice. Bishop takes e6. Okay, do we need to be greedy, or one piece is enough? Let's try to be greedy. What is going to happen after king takes e6? I assume it's gonna be d5? There are two moves there. I don't like the king to move back to f7 and then try to hide like this. This is gonna be the dream for black if it's happening. So there might be a move like queen c4, queen b3, and this just happened actually. Queen c4 is on the board. So Fokidov took the second sacrifice on e6, and then he continued with, Predke continued with queen c4 check. And he played it rather quickly. Well, the time situation is Predke has been spending quite a lot of time. They have like roughly 25 minutes difference to one another. So where does the king go? If the king goes here, isn't it just made in one? Like this, yeah? And it's made in one. So the king has to go to f6 or f5. And what's the difference? Let's take a look. After king f6, which looks like okay, right? It looks a very normal position. Not normal. There is nothing normal in this position, having the king on f6. But it looks like what's going to be next, because the bishop here is standing very nicely, covering all the checking spots for the knight to the king. So if white is going to win this one, it's going to be quite another spectacular game. So maybe d5 now, trying to get the knight here, or trying to give another check here maybe, or check here, or what else can be done? Bishop here even, right? So, and what's the difference between king f5, let's say? Because this looks, yeah, how do we even evaluate this position? I was thinking of, okay, any checks, the king can always have some place to go. The thing is, white only has 3 pieces. If white can have another piece that's attacking the king, that might be just enough to win. And how to incorporate these rooks to be in the game? Because if we try to have it now, what do we do? Rook e1, but it's going to be quite slow, right? maybe black will just play king g6 followed by h6, and if you give a check here, king goes here and then here. So there's always a place for... I'm liking king f5 more than king f6, just because after king f6 it looks like this spot on f6 it belongs to any of the pieces, just to try to be surrounding the king, like maybe the knight or maybe the bishop. So after queen c4, maybe king f5 is the move. So if we are going to continue this, how are we going to supposed to play? g4. Let's try g4. All right, I can take, but I can also go here. And I don't see any follow-up after that. But oh, Fokidov played king f6. Okay, this is a bit too difficult to comprehend everything. So let's take a look what the engine says, whether the sacrifices work, because I don't think it is, and the computer agrees. I don't see any direct follow-up to the game. So in this position, king f6 is the good move. What about king f5? King f5, not so good because of d5. Okay. Alright, of course d5, yeah? You want to check on e4, king f6, and mate on e6. So this is just not correct. And what happened after that f6? Just queen d3. Ah, yeah. Alright, but he played king f6 and then d5 right away, because what else, right? On how to continue this game, you have to get as many pieces as you can to the attack to the king. So far the knight was not able to participate due to the diagonal that's controlled by the bishop. So now d5 is kind of like restricting the king, but also at the same time it's preserving the square of e4 for the knight. And what to do in this position? So the computer suggested rook e8. What does it do? Okay, this is going to be very interesting because computers saw everything easily, yeah, but for human on the game, this is not too easy to spot everything. Okay, if this one happened, rook a d1. Oh, this is... Predke is playing a very interesting game. I think he's having fun with this position right now, because all he wants to play is just attacking game. Alright, so while this is interesting, we have to circle back to the master section. So let's take a look board 1, and we'll keep an eye on this one because I also want to see the continuation of this game, whether the king will eventually get checkmated or will black be able to survive and the king is going to be safe. And let's circle back to the first board in the master section and toggle off the evaluation bar. And after f takes e4, he played knight g6 eventually. Probably he's listening to me now that the knight on f8 is not doing anything. You have to, even though now knight g6 is not really doing anything, but at least it is in a better position. And bishop c4 is on the board, probably preparing for d5 push, and here bishop b4. Okay, so do we still push this pawn just to get some other pass pawn on the center, because you're still up a pawn here? And after d5, okay, what to do here as white? Sorry, as black. So you can take this, takes this, maybe takes everything. And how? No. Is it even possible to play this? Like what happened if I just play this move? And then this is lost, yeah? Okay, so d5 might be just a move then. Or maybe d5 allows knight e5? This is a very complicated position. bishop takes maybe? No, bishop takes, there is this takes. Okay. Bishop b4, d5. I like this move d5. If takes this one, I think I can just take it with the knight. It looks like white will maintain the extra pawn after all. Okay, one more thing. d5. Let's take a look once more. Do I miss anything in this position? Yeah, I don't think so. I think d5 is just a move. And let's try to see what the ancient says. He suggested h3. What's wrong with d5? There's nothing wrong with it. It's also another move. And takes this one. And e d5. Oh, you can actually take this. And after queen d3, knight e7. Oh, this knight is saving the day. Okay, so this is possible then. This is possible. I don't know whether it's gonna happen, but d5 is so tempting to play. I mean, this is the move that I would play instantly. Although the computer suggested h3, this little move is always useful in the end. But let's see what Mehmet Yarov will choose in the end, and what's happening on board 2 between Sorana versus Parham Maksudlu. Oh, I'm so happy that my prediction is on the spot on this game. Like, Parham has been playing according to my prediction. So we saw the position of the rook ac1 here, and then he played queen b7, rook fd1. Okay, we didn't see rook fd1, but it's another move to consider, of course. And here bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, and this pawn moves, trying to get a majority type of position with c4, and here now b3. Okay. The thing is, after b3, wait, what happened after b4? I guess this is what Parham is currently thinking, because this looks like a very critical position right now. Like, b4 is there. So maybe after b4, bishop e1, and then you have to play c3, and maybe now a3. Yeah, you have to try to distract the pawn chain like that, because if you take this, I think you'll be able to actually take this one first, maybe. I don't know. Take this one first or this one first. Eventually both pawns will lose. So b3, let's do it again. b4, bishop e1, and yeah, although it looks tempting, but I don't think it is the right move to play. Yeah, so shouldn't play b4. But alternatively, what can we do in this position? Knight a4 is an option. This is the common reaction to this position as well. What about improving this knight? Should we improve this knight? Because if this knight, then bishop e1 is always there. Yeah, Sorana just prepared everything with rook fd1, trying to make the e1 square available for the bishop. And after this, let's keep attacking. f6, let's say. Let's keep attacking. Where does the knight go? It has to go to f3. And then, yeah, I think we have to keep the position intact like this. Probably now it's knight c7. To be honest, I like black's position better than white's, just because of this pawn on c4 looks like it's so advanced that it will pose some disturbance to white's position later. Okay, b3 is still on the board, and Sorana is still thinking. And apparently the game between Yakubov versus Fidit we have some developments in the moves. After knight f3, he played knight c6, and after knight c3, bishop g4, knight takes b5, and knight takes e5. So yeah, this is the current position right now. Very complicated. Do we dare to sacrifice our queen like this? Takes this, maybe it's too much, yeah? But this kind of, okay, bishop is going to take c4, attacking this. Yeah, maybe it's still a bit too much anyway. Because now, even if we have some discovery with the bishop, there's bishop here too. And there's no good discovery yet. Like maybe here? Oh, no, of course it's a check. Here is a check. No discovery. No good discovery. Like here, first of all, there's a check here. Second, I think queen b6 is also fine. Okay, so we cannot sacrifice the queen like that. But what else can we do here? Probably just take this. Yeah, just take this with the bishop. And now you're actually trying to... Now maybe you're trying to take on e5 next move if black doesn't do anything. So if takes, and maybe knight, like this, attacking this, castles. Okay, very complicated. If castling, then white has the pawn up anyway, so maybe just try to protect the pawn on e4 and white should be fine. Okay. And let's see the game between Sukandar versus Rapport. Wow. Opposite castles. Interesting. So we saw the position of the knight c5 and f4. And here Rapport played bishop d7, attacking with f5 and just long castle. Okay. Now the pawn on e6, it's still being protected. What else can we say in this position? Maybe it's time to bring the queen. Though I'm not sure where to bring it. I like to move queen e1. Because at some point I'm still threatening this again. Like, for example, yeah, I want to take this and knight d5 and take this with a check. So I think this subtle move like queen e1, I think it's necessary. Let's say takes here, and how to continue this? Queen b4. Okay, what does the computer suggest in this position? a3. Ooh. a3. So after takes this, take with the knight, I guess. No, with the c pawn, because you want to open the c file for the rook like this. Okay. And what's wrong with queen e1? Queen e1, it's fine, but it's just that it's not the best move. Bishop f6 is there, queen f2. It's still a game, right? King b8 and rook a d1. Yeah, all the normal looking moves. You're developing your pieces. Rook h e8 and h3. Okay, this is just a game. Alright, so Sukandar is enjoying a better position right now, but of course the game is still far from ending. There's still so many pieces on the board, and there's only one pawn that's being traded. So he has this option a3. Let's see if he's going to play the best move that the computer chooses, or he will play some other things. And let's take a look at the London game between Grishchuk versus Yang Yi, because after f6, knight c6 happened, bishop f4, and knight e7 check, queen takes e7, and e takes f4. And here queen c7 back, and now the pawn on f4 is under attack. So how do we protect this f4 pawn? Queen c1, g3. Those are the two moves that I can see for now. Or do we just forget about it and play something else, like c4? I think just queen c1 should be fine. Queen c1, queen e3, you play rook e1, attacking this knight. Yeah, I think queen c1 should be alright. And probably what to do now? Maybe c4. Or even maybe after here b6. You just want to control this thing with the bishop later. Okay, let's come back to the challengers game. So we were looking at the Predke versus Volkidov, and after d5 there's still no move yet. Okay, let's update ourselves as well on the game between Romanov versus Donchenko. So that was also very interesting. I think we see the position after b6 here, and then d5, and then bishop a6 attacking f1 bishop, knight 3 d2, b takes c5, queen a4, and castles. Okay, d takes c6, and now take f1, and queen takes f3, knight bd2, and queen d5. Okay, one rook for two knights, and the king is kind of exposed in the center. Is it enough for black to win, or is it just okay for white? So they have a similar time situation, so I guess everything is still under control. Queen d5 is on the board. Thinking maybe white is trying to castle here, castle long, because the king, yeah, this is actually a big question. Where do you put the king? On the king side or on the queen side? I mean, in this position, my first reaction would be just to castle. And then, since now the rook is a part of the game, you can try to do something. So maybe in this position, rook goes here. I don't know, maybe rook goes here, just attacking this. With two knights, if we go to the endgame like this, I think with two knights protecting each other like this, white has some chance not to lose the game, or even, I don't know, maybe win the game. Is it too much? Because okay, it's a bit scary to have like 4 pawns against one, but yeah, these two knights are keeping everything under control. So queen d5 is still on the board. Apart from castling, what can be the alternative? Because white is thinking right now. Is the knight going to e3 a good move here? I'm not too sure. Or maybe just keep the king in the center is fine, and then you can just try to attack c5 by rook c1. Yeah, let's see what computer says. Knight e3. and after queen h1, knight df1. So okay, two knights are connected like this and also protecting the pawn on g3. So if rook goes here, stopping the castle, it's fine. So just alright, so what computer suggests is to keep the king on the center of the board and connect the knights and protect the pawn on g3, and you're just standing okay. Alright. it's so hard to understand this position. Okay, let's come back to the master section. And oh, there's already a draw between Mehmet Yar versus Abdusattorov. So the first part has already finished unexpectedly. Bishop b4, d5, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and yeah, they call it a day. So in the current or the final position, it should be quite drawish, yeah. So this might happen. Actually, we analyzed it before, right? Takes everything like this, and queen d3 and knight e7, and eventually it's still going to be a draw. So so it means Abdusattorov is still leading the master section, but it would be depending on how Sarana is doing against Parham, because Sarana is also the other player who is scoring a win yesterday. So if he's going to win another game today, then he's going to be the sole leader of the master section. But it's still a long way to go from finishing, yeah, because this is still round number 2 and they're going to play until round 9. So speaking of Sarana, let's see what's happening on his game against Parham. So after b3 here, oh, I was thinking of knight e4, and actually that's what the computer suggested. Knight e4 is the best move. But here Parham chose to play rook e6, which is not bad as well, because I think black is spoiled with choices here, that there are many good moves that black can choose from. And here f3, try to stop knight e4 and knight c7, and this is still like a 0-0-0 position. And Parham is still thinking hard right now. And I think, okay, so the idea of knight c7 is you just want to trap the queen. You have this rook a6 idea, but the queen can just go to b4. So I think your task here is to save the pawn on a2. Yeah, probably. Now what to do as white if we were Sarana in this position, because if we're moving our queen too fast right now, it invites a5 to come. So this is not an ideal position for white. So alternatively, what should we do? Should we just wait rook a6 to happen and play queen b4? That might be just it, and a2 has to be protected, right? Or we can also play queen a3 here, because after rook a6 we can go queen e7 and attacking f7, and also this knight is kind of pinned, so maybe this is the move that Sarana is going to go anyway. Yeah, queen a3 followed by queen e7 if it happens. Yeah, the knight on e5 stands very strongly here, but oh, okay, I think I understand. I think after queen here, it's a5 now. No, is it? Because after this, turns out there's b4. The bishop is just fine, although it was pinned, but now it's fine. And maybe that was just a free pawn. So okay, queen a3 then. Queen a3, a5 is not really possible. But in this position, what can black do then? Still no move yet from Sarana, and let's move back to the game between Yakubov versus fidget. And oh, this has happened. So after knight e5, this was the last position that we saw. Bishop takes c4 and then knight f6. And now, do we dare to sacrifice our queen, or is it still not advisable? So if takes here, bishop checks this, and takes this maybe? Yeah, this looks a bit too loose, yeah? So maybe just queen e7, maybe queen. Where else can we go here? Or even like bishop here, or even knight here, yeah? Yeah, so no, we shouldn't sacrifice like that. So after knight f6, what do we do? h3 to force this idea. Let's say h3 takes like this, and probably takes. This looks okay for black. So what else? If castles, castles maybe just also this, maybe takes and takes this, yeah. Because after this, oh, there's this one. Yeah, this is not looking good for black. Okay, so maybe just h3, it's fine. What does the computer say about this position? Bishop a5. Oh, bishop a5, I see. Yeah, this is a critical move because you're also attacking knight c7. So here knight takes f3, g takes f3, queen takes, I think rook takes, and then bishop here, and you play knight c7. Yeah, this is the critical line. King e7, and you play a rook move. Okay, and now this knight is attacking a8. The bishop is also attacking d1, and g7 is also under attack. Everything is under attack. Alright, knight f6 is still on the board. Sarana is thinking right now. Sorry, not Sarana. Yakubov. Yeah, so he might be just thinking about that critical line with bishop a5. Okay. Let's take a look at the fourth board between Sundar versus Richard Report. Okay, there's some sacrifice happening now. So after castling fe, and bishop e6. And why did I just miss this? Oh, this. Okay, so this is what I can see after a few seconds. If bishop takes, you take the knight, and then queen g4. You're attacking this knight. And if you play queen e5, let's say, there is this rook to f5, and I think the queen is trapped. But if you play king d7, and now maybe it's time for the knight to move, because you have this check and also a bunch of other things, like the king is not really well placed in the center. And if after bishop e6, knight takes e6 like this, then what might just happen is, what is actually happening? Knight takes, and then just knight d5, maybe, because after knight takes, it just takes this, and you're attacking this square, because if you take this, then this bishop is lost. Okay, so what else can we see in this position? And this is actually a very good sacrifice that we missed. Okay, a3 is the best move still, but I'm trying to understand. a3 is still the best move, but this also apparently is a good move too. But after bishop e6, you have to take with the knight. Oh, knight b3. Yeah. Knight b3, queen c7, and knight d5 maybe, queen b8. And how do you start? Okay, knight a5, because if you take this, this comes with a check, and you have to just take a look at this queen, yeah. And you have to play bishop g5. Okay, knight b6. Okay, if white wants to make a draw, then it can happen by doing this, king c7, and then repeat the moves. But if you want to play something else, then bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, and apparently there is nothing better than repeating. Or if knight c4 here, oh, b5. Okay. Alright, so Sundar is having fun. Yeah, he's totally having fun with this position after bishop e6. And time situation, it's still very similar. Although they still have to play so many moves until the 40th move and get an additional 30 minutes. We'll definitely keep an eye on this. Let's see what happened in Grischuk's game versus Yang. So after queen c7, Grischuk still hasn't moved anything yet on how to protect the f4. Oh, actually he played queen c1, and then Yang played b6 immediately. Yes, always on the spot. I like it. So the thing is, you have to be ready to cover this square. Sorry, cover the anything on this square, actually on e4, assuming this might happen. And then this pawn is getting under attack. I don't know, maybe not like that, because f4 is under attack right now. So this is the way for the bishop to go, because you want to keep the pawn like this. You don't want to move. You don't want to move it to f5, because it will just allow the knight to be centered on e5. So b6. Yeah, do not forget about deflopping your pieces, even though now this is still in the not opening, maybe it's already the middle game stage, yeah? Yeah, in the middle game stage, and you still haven't deflopped your bishop and connect the rooks, you better do it. So b6 is on the board, and if anything like rook e1 here, the bishop is just on time to support the knight by playing bishop e7. Yeah, this is what I was trying to explain. Like, you shouldn't play f5 in this position, because it will allow knight e5. So you have other means to support the knight, that is the bishop, and this is good enough. And yeah, next move you just play rook c8, maybe rook d8, and then at some point you just want to take on d4, maybe. It would be depending on the position. So here after b6, queen e3 is on the board, and Yang replied immediately with knight d6. So I think it's because if you play bishop b7 here, this knight will be, oh, actually you can just take this one, yeah, like this, takes and knight here. Yeah, because now the knight can move back here. The queen is already protecting the pawn on f4. It's a different story to what we saw before. And yeah, this might be what Yang didn't want to happen. So that's why after queen e3, he just moved the knight back to d6, not allowing this exchange to happen. And yeah, now this pawn is under protection with the other pawn, so maybe this bishop has to go to d7 anyway to protect the e6 pawn. Yeah, playing slowly like that, it's still a game. It's still a game, yep. And so knight d6 is still the last move on the position. Okay, and what do we have on the game between Predcave versus Fokidov? We saw d5 and h5 here. So I think the cover suggested rook e8, although it is very hard to understand why, right? Why rook e8? h5, it's more understandable. It's as if, I mean, black just wants to give more space for the king to hide in case there are some checks or anything like that. So but apparently h5 is not the best move in this position. and but black's still standing fine. So queen e4 is what computer suggested, and you just play king f7, queen e6 check, and then you have to hide on e8, and after d6, knight f6. So you are allowing this to be traded again and hoping for, I mean, white already sacrificed 2 pieces, so giving 1 back is totally not a problem for black. But here, if you want to keep continuing the game in a more tactical manner, knight b5, and after bishop d5, queen takes e7, takes, d takes e7, takes this, and then what's happening? Knight c7, and then you get the rook, or kind of like exchanging the pieces like that. So knight has to go to c6, and you take the rook, and play this position. Yeah, it's not an easy position to play for both sides actually, but it is even more difficult to think about the king has to go back to e8 like that, like this. But that might be just the plan that black has to do anyway. So after queen e4, this is a checkmate in 1. And also, is there any other way to stop queen e6 apart from king f7? If we play this, you just take here, and then this is just losing. You have this check, and maybe this check or this check, and then the king will be on g5. So that's gonna be very dangerous. But first of all, white has to find this move, queen e4. It looks like it's a move to make anyway, because you're threatening mate in 1, so it should come quite naturally to Pret K, but you never know. A move like knight e4 is also a very tempting move to make. So we'll see which one that he's gonna pick. And well, meanwhile, I think it is the right time for me to take my break. So yep, don't go anywhere, because I'll be back after a few minutes. Hello, welcome back to round 2 of the UzChess Cup 2024. I'm your host Irene Sukandar, and we already have one game finished in the master section. That's the first board between Mehmet Yarov versus Abdusattorov that ended with a draw. And the 4 remaining boards in the master sections are still undergoing right now, and I think we can take a look what's happening in this game. It's so far the most interesting game in the master section, and that's involving some sacrifice that Sindarov just did on e6. So let's take a look back on move 16 where he did the sacrifice. Bishop takes e6, knight takes e6, and then knight b3. So I think we already analyzed this before. After queen c7, knight d5, then queen has to resort it back to b8, and here knight b6 check. King c7, probably just try to gain some time, but eventually knight f5 is on the board. So if you remember our analysis from before, the computer said just have to play bishop g5 here, and well, there are a few outcomes that white can choose from. If white just want to repeat the moves, knight b6, knight d5, then it's going to be repetition and it's going to be a draw. Or if white is ambitious enough, white can try to play something else as well. So for example, in this position, what white can do is to take g5 like this, takes, and then knight c4. And well, this might be well, again, knight b6 is a threat to mate in one, so here black has to play b5 to allow the king to have some space on b7. And well, it would be depending what to do next. I mean, it's a fun position to play as white for sure. Whether it is enough to win or not, it's a different question. So here maybe what happened if check here actually, because you cannot go here because of queen d6 check, so you have to come here. And now maybe you just have to take this, yeah, takes, and then I don't know whether this position is desirable for white. You're kind of like exchanging so many stuff here. So, and Rapot played it. Rapot play bishop g5. It is currently now on the board. So will Sindarov repeat the moves, or will Sindarov be more ambitious and play the other moves like takes and knight c4? We will see. But yeah, bishop takes a6, it was surely a very interesting sacrifice that he did. And judging from the time situation, yeah, Sindarov is leading a bit by 11 or 10 minutes. And let's also update ourselves on the 5th board between Grischuk versus Yang Yi. It has been played rather slowly here. So we see the move of the queen e3, and then knight d6, rook a d1, a5, rook f e1, and rook e8. Okay, so now, yeah, it gives the bishop some option on how or where to develop, because now the rook on e8 is already protecting the pawn on e6. And what about the game between Fidit Yakuboy versus Fidit? And we see another interesting sacrifice here. So I believe we see the position after knight f6 and h3, and I thought after h3 black has to just, you know, somehow take f3 and get away with that position, but turns out I missed something, and Fidit demonstrated it rather well. Bishop takes f2. So what is the idea in this position? Thing is, if you take king like this, that's a lot of calculation here. Is this a move, or do we take? No, I don't think we take this one. Yeah, I think it should be this one, this check. And I think the king has to go up like this. Again, I think Fidit is going to have a real fun in this position. And maybe after this, what's gonna happen? Check like this? And castle maybe? Phew. Alright, bishop takes f2. I think you have to take. If you don't take it, where can you go? King f1. King f1, but there is this knight. Takes so many sacrifices again. and calculation too. Like there's so many things to be captured. Wow. Wow. Okay, let's see what the computer suggests, because I am having some difficulty in comprehending this position. So turns out this sacrifice is not a good one. And here you don't play king f1, you don't take the bishop, you play king e2. What's wrong with taking f2? Knight e4, yes, we saw that. King e3, and then you take f3 first. Bishop takes f3, gf, and then knight takes d2. And after queen takes d2, queen g5 check. And what's wrong with, oh, if king here, then king g2, yeah? Queen g2, so you have to play f4, but you give a check first, check, and then check here, and probably castle, and the king stays in the center. And king has to go to e4. Amazing. Ah, because if you go to e2, then black will just win. Queen g2. Is it? Oh, king e3 again, and probably just queen g3 here, and then repeating the move, and maybe just castle actually this position. Yeah, rook goes here. Wow, this is so complicated. So if king f1, it doesn't help the position, because king f1 is bishop f3 and then gf, and then bishop c5 back. So white wins a pawn along the way then. White doesn't get any extra material or anything. So the computer suggested after bishop takes f2, it has to go to e2. The king goes to e2, and if you take c4 takes, and then bishop takes f3, gf, bishop c5. This looks similar to the other version, but what is the difference? You can play bishop e3 and then force the endgame, because in the endgame white will stand better, maybe thanks to the pawn on a7 being very weak. That might be just the case. Okay, so Yakuboev is still thinking now. Well, he has a lot of thinking to do for sure, because this position is very complicated. There are so many calculations to be made. And let's also update ourselves on the second board between Sarana versus Maksudlu, and this has turned rather well into Sarana's favor apparently. So we saw the position after, I think after like rook e6, right? After a knight c7. Okay, so he just played bishop e1 without any problem. Knight fe8, preparing for f6. And after queen d2, rook d8, bishop g3, then f6, and knight g4, h5, knight f2, and rook c6. And after here, queen c2, knight e6. As you can see, there are lots of maneuvering moves here. And now eventually some trade. B takes c4, B takes c4. Okay, so this pawn, even though it is now a pass pawn, but it's not really a strong one, because at some point white will push e4 and try to disturb this pawn. This is like the root of the chain. So this is in the, yeah, this is the thing in the strategy of the pawn structure, that you should attack the root of the pawn chain, and d5 is the chain, so you just attack it so that it makes this pawn on c4 becoming quite weak. But Sarana decided to control the file first by playing rook b1, attacking the queen. And now where does the queen go? It might go to a6 like this. And okay, we're not in a hurry to play e4. In fact, maybe we have to preserve this idea with queen g6 at some point, because this is a very good diagonal attacking the pawn on h5. Oh, maybe this is why the computer prefers white, because of the pawn on h5. If the pawn was on h7, maybe it's still okay for black. But now this might be just a weakness that black has. So maybe in this position, what to do? Do we double up the rook? Maybe it looks interesting, and then attacking the b file. That is possible. And what else? e4, although it's very tempting to play now. Is it the time to do it? Because if you take this, then there's d5 and you have to suffer the fork. So e4 is interesting actually. But black is, black's position somehow up with this pawn and this pawn. It looks quite loose. And white is totally in control right now. So Parham is still thinking on where to move the queen. Or might he be thinking of rook b6 as well, trying to offer this trade? It is quite possible too. Alright, he has 16 minutes left on the clock, and he still has to make 14 moves to get to the time control. And which one do we want to see? Let me take a look quickly on other positions. Oh, Fidet's game. Let's go to Fidet's game. Because Yakubov decided to take the f2 bishop. So this is gonna get way more interesting now, because after bishop takes f2, we analyze that king e2 is the best move, because after this then there is knight e4, which Fidet just played, and you have to go up. You have to go to e3 and not be afraid. And this might be just what Yakubov is going to do. They have similar time situation right now, and I think he just did it. I think from the live feed we can see that he just played king e3. And after king e3, I believe we analyze knight takes c4 check, takes this, takes this, takes this, takes everything, and then queen g5. And then you have to play f4. This is what we analyze. Are we going to see this position on the board or not? Oh, I'm so looking forward to seeing it. It's gonna be too interesting if it happens. But Fidet now is thinking, and apparently the time situation caught up, because we saw earlier on that Fidet was having kind of like the time trouble. He had quite a big time difference to his opponent, but now it's looking like it's back to normal. Both of them have 20 minutes each, and yeah, there are so many games in this round, both in Masters and Challenger section, where the players are just having fun with the position. They're sacrificing this, sacrificing that, lots of calculation, lots of checks. But yeah, it's totally fun to watch and try to understand it. I don't know whether they're enjoying this actually, but well, because sometimes for some players they like to have like a more calm games when you win the games in a strategical manner, not a tactical where you have to calculate everything and yeah, and then just be precise about all the principles. But here concrete chess is required. You have to calculate precisely, move by move, not to miss anything, because you can see just the situation on the board right now. You cannot play principal chess out of this. You have to play concrete chess and then get your best calculation on the board. So yeah, Fidet is still thinking, and maybe it's time to also update ourselves on the game between Sindara versus Richard Rapport, which there's still no update yet. So bishop g5 is still the last move being played, and Sindara is still thinking. So again, if Sindara wants to make a draw, he can do so by playing knight b6, knight d5 all the time. But if he wants to be more ambitious, then he would go for this idea: bishop g5, and knight c4, and then b5, this type of position. So he's still calculating that one too. And what happened between Christian versus Yangi, still not much going on yet. They're still also maneuvering the position. And the game between Pratke versus Fokidov, ooh, it has turned into this. Alright, so h5, we saw this h5, and queen e4 was the best move that computer suggested, and Pratke played it. King f7, you have to resort your king back to e8 and be at the safest place there. Queen e6, king e8, and d6. And here, what did the computer suggest? I think it was knight f6, right? Because you allow this to happen. But here, rook f7 and bishop g5, and now maybe knight f6 will come at some point anyway. Because you don't want to get the bishop over here, like it would be a disaster if bishop takes e7 and then you have to take this and I don't know, takes this again, or give a check first on g8. That's also possible. So I assume that in this position that f6 will happen. Or do I dare to play knight c6? The thing is, after knight c6 there might be knight d5. Yeah, if I were Pratke here, I would really have fun in this position. Yeah, all you have to do is just going forward, attack the king, try to get as much as you can along the way, and yeah, just try to pressure your opponent in such a way. So I'm just curious, what does the computer suggest in this position? Knight f6 indeed is the first option, and after knight b5 attacking c7, you just have to move the king to f8 and rook a d1, let's say, and knight b d7. Anything like this, I think you can just simply take this with any pieces, yeah, and black will be left with an extra piece in the end. Okay, what about other games? Let me quickly take a look. Oh, there was already one game finish in the Challenger with a decisive result that Suleimani Aydin won against Fakidov, and we saw this game earlier on actually, where we could see that Suleimani was having a nice position, a nice attacking position. So let's take a look. We saw the game in this position after rook a e1 and then queen b8. Let's see how he finished this off. Rook f6, knight g8, rook goes back, and then f5, takes everything, but then the back rank looks quite loose. Yeah, I like this move. Knight c4. Ooh, d4. Okay, so what's the idea? Okay, maybe after takes, then just king takes, yeah? If check like this, maybe just knight here. So it should be fine. And here, Fakidov played bishop e6, trying to trade the rook. Rook e6. Rook f4 was a blunder because the bishop on e6 is under attack now, and resign. Okay, what a blunder by Fakidov, yeah? Yeah, this position is actually still better for white, but black just made it easy, way too easy for white to finish the game off. After queen e1, that's it. Because after you play rook f6, there's this knight g4, taking this with a check, and then this is going to be also hanging. So that's why after rook f4, queen e1 here, Fakidov resigned. Yeah, the king is not under attack. This one is totally loose. Okay, so well done for Suleimani. And let's circle back to our master section if there is any development in this game. So yeah, after rook b1, Barham offered a trade of the rooks with rook b6, which Sarvana accepted, and after a b6, rook b1 and b5. Now trying to use the majority of the pawns in the queen side, but I don't have much hope of those pawns because white is very solid, and again this pawn, this is such a loose pawn. But for sure, white has to keep playing precisely. So what do we do in this position? b4 might be the next move, or maybe we don't have to be afraid of b4, because then we can always attack it. But if we are really worried about it, we can play rook b4 ourselves with the idea of a4, or with the idea of queen b2 and then attacking b5. Yeah, this might be just the idea. Yeah, rook b4, stopping everything, and also at the same time I'm trying to bring the knight back to d1 and c3 so that it attacks both pawns at the same time. The bishop is standing perfectly here because b8 is actually a very important square that the bishop needs to keep an eye on. So yeah, I'm rooting for rook b4. What is the computer saying here? Knight d1 immediately. So you don't have to be worried about b4 then, because after b4 in this position, bishop e1. Yeah, I didn't see this move, bishop e1. Yeah, now it makes sense, yeah, because now this pawn is loose. Yeah, if we are not afraid of b4, then yeah, we should do this move, because I really want to play knight c3. Yeah, rook b4, I suggested b4 just because I want to stop b4 immediately, but turns out we don't have to worry about that move. Okay, so Sarana is looking good, and if this is still 0, 0, 0, not 0, 0.1, but it's very slightly better for Sarana, but things are looking good for him. At least I don't think he's gonna lose anyway. He doesn't have anything to risk in his position, so at the very least I think he can manage to pull a draw and still tying for the first place with Abdusattorov. Or actually it depends, because other games are still going on, like other games, whoever drew yesterday, and if he wins today, he's going to join the lead. Okay, apart from Sarana, of course. If Sarana wins, then he's going to be the sole leader. And there is, we are going to reach this position. Okay, it's a little bit transposition, not exactly the right order or the same order, but I think it should be still better. And maybe this is it. Yeah, well, no, this is actually the right order of moves. So after here, knight takes e4, king e3, bishop f3, takes, and takes d2, takes d2. And I believe we have, yes, queen g5 is the move that computer suggested, and you have to play f4 here. Yeah, you need this knight so that the king cannot go to e2, otherwise there's queen g2 and queen f3 check. So here white is forced to play f4 like this, and then takes. I think this is what we're seeing. And at the very least, if fitted once, he can force a draw by repeating the moves and gives all these checks. But if he's ambitious enough, then he might insert this castle at some point. We'll see. So queen g5 is currently what's happening on the board. So while we're waiting and then trying to understand his position, I'll be also looking at other games if they are interesting enough. Yeah. Still no updates in the game between Sindar versus Rapport. It's still... Oh, actually, Sindar just moved something. Okay, let's go back to the fourth board. And here, after bishop g5, knight b6, knight c7, knight d5, king c8, are we going to see repetition and a draw? I was hoping that he would play something else. And there is that stair to the opponent. signifying that I think I'm ready to shake your hands and agree for a draw. Or maybe I'm hoping that I'm wrong. So one more repetition at d5 and I think Robot can claim a draw. Unless Sindarov played different move, but I don't think he will. He's reaching the knight on b6 and he's a bit hesitant now. And we can see from the live feed, I think it's Sarana standing behind him watching the game. Yeah, I mean 13 minutes left on the clock. If he couldn't find anything, it's always wise to just settle for a draw. But yeah, I was rather hoping that he would play something else, not repeating the moves. Okay, so he's back to thinking. Maybe he's still rather hesitant to get a draw, because, well, usually when you're having this type of position, you would feel that there should be something on the board that he might miss, or he might be feeling there's something amiss. But yeah, I have a feeling that he's gonna just shake hands and draw. Just one more move after knight d5, then it's gonna be, I guess it's gonna be threefold after knight d5 and king c8. So yeah, I do want to stay on this game, of course, but I also would like to move to the other game. And let's take a look on the game between Yakuboy versus Fidit, because f4 has already played, and after f4, now knight takes, and then queen here. Are we going to see this position on the board? And 9 minutes, 20 minutes versus 9 minutes. So Fidit doesn't really have much time on the clock, but thankfully the position has already been simplified a lot. So it will reduce the number of calculation significantly. So still thinking, 9 minutes, and now below 9 minutes, actually it's 8 minutes something, and he's reaching out to play a move. And is he going to take the bishop on c4? We'll see very soon. Yeah, these players, they keep being hesitant, yeah? Both Sindarov and Fidit. Because the thing is, if you give a check first, like this, maybe, I think the king has to go up. Yeah, because if the king goes down, then it's GG after queen here. So f4 queen g3, king has to go up. The thing is, I think the king is pretty safe in the center, because thanks to all these pieces surrounding the king will not get checkmated. So he took. So Fidit took c4, b takes c4 is already on the board, and queen g3. So both players have been playing kind of like the best moves for both white and black. So we'll see. The king has to go up, if I'm not mistaken, but it was also fine if the king goes down. As long after queen e2, you have to go back to e3. What's going on after king here? Let's say I castle. Looks like the king is so weak in the center, but it's fine. Knight d6, protecting anything like this, but you still have to play rook f8. And you don't take, that's the idea. The knight is just going to be the shield of the king along the d file. So king d4, and if rook a d8, then I think c5 was also suffice. But rook a6 is what Congress suggested. Rook e6, and then c5 eventually. Okay, are we going to see this position, or is Fidit going to just repeating the moves? That's the things, yeah. Or if Yakuboev is not brave enough to play king e4. King e2 might actually be dangerous because you just castle. And what is the idea? So the king cannot really come across to the other side of the board because the rooks are not connected. I mean, how does it make it work? Because otherwise there might be some fork or something like that. So Yakuboev has only the option to just go up then and be brave about it, yeah? And f5, let's say f5. Wow, what is going on? f5 and be brave again, king e5. And now of the castle, what's happening? Knight d6 and then rook e8, king d4. Okay, making this as a shield. And after this, rook a6 again or king c5. So maybe after this is rook e4 then. Yeah, rook e4, king d5, queen b3. Is queen b3 a move? Queen b3, king c6, and white is better. Can you imagine that white is better in this position like this? Oh my. Oh my. I mean, it's totally fun. Actually, now it's back to 0-0-0 again, but to be brave and then just to trust your instinct that this is fine, that the king is another attacking piece on the board, it's so hard to believe. Alright, now Yakuboev has two big options. King goes to e4 or e2. And he still has 18 minutes on the clock, so he's fine. And apparently on the other board, Sindarov just played something, and it might not be, it is a repetition. Knight d5 is on the board, and yeah, the arbiter validates the draw, and yeah, the players look like they're having fun. It feels like white couldn't find anything better than repetition, because even if white plays something else, it's not guaranteed that it's gonna win after this variation. This position, and then takes. Yeah, this is still a game. It's not very sure that white is better in this one. So Sindarov settled for a draw, and yeah, both players also made another draw yesterday, so they are on 1 point out of 2 so far, from 2 draws that they make in the first 2 rounds. So we have 2 draws so far in the master sections. First board, Mamedyarov versus Abdusattorov, and now the fourth board, Sindarov versus Richard Rapport. So let's get back to the game between Yakuboev versus Fidit. So Yakuboev was brave, and he played king e4. So are we gonna see f5? I'm so excited for this one. f5 will be, how to put it, it's not every day that you are seeing a 2700 game having the king in the center where there are still 3 major pieces on the board. So it's a lot of calculation, a lot of guts to play such a position. I mean, kudos to Yakuboev for being brave and then playing the king e4, but also it's not that easy to decide to play this position with 1 piece less for Fidit. So both players are really giving us quite a show on their game now. And I just saw on the live feed that Fidit just moved something and he castled. So instead of playing f5, he castled, and castle is also equally good. And now I think it might be just a transposition anyway, because the computer suggested to play knight d6, so rook f e8 is another way to go. But if you want to also include f5 here, I think it's also fine, as long as you don't take it, yeah? Because if you take it, I think you're going to lose right away because of rook a e8 and take d5 on the next move. So if this happens after f5, then the king has to go to, where does the king go? Maybe to d4 to avoid any sort of checks. And if knight is getting pinned like this, you have rook a6 or you have c5. Alright, so castle is on the board, and we'll see what Yakuboev will do in this position. Knight d6 looks more natural. You just want to also give a shield to the king, and also, yeah, just bring your extra material to the game, right? So still no games, or still no moves yet after castling. And oh, Yu Yang is kind of in time trouble right now. He's down to 3 minutes, and we left it quite far behind. So somewhere like here, rook e8, queen e2, bishop b7, knight d2, rook a d8, lots of maneuvering move, queen h5, g6, and queen h4, king g7, knight f1, and just take a look at all the pawns. They're still all intact on the board. There hasn't been any pawn tradings yet, and knight f1 is on the board. Where does the knight go after this? Maybe to h2, yeah, or maybe to g3. Eventually you want to end it up on g4, attacking both the pawn on f6 and queen h6, something like that. Okay, 3 minutes, I think 2 minutes now actually for Yu Yang, while Grishuk still has 12 minutes on the board. Okay, let's move back to the game between... Okay, Yakuboev is still thinking apparently after castle. And what about Sarana versus Maksudlu? I think we saw the position after this one, b5 and knight d1. So Sarana played the best move. Knight c7, queen b2, attacking, well, indirectly attacking b5, although it's still kind of protected right now. Queen a6, knight c3, and then queen e6, rook e1. And this is what's happening on the board right now. Queen c6, so I have a feeling somehow this game might end up with a draw. Like neither Sarana or Maksudlu will force a matter. Like they will just, not to commit to anything. Yeah, you can see from the last few moves, like queen a6, like black is not doing anything pretty much. Black is just waiting, and knight c3, move to e6, and now move to c6. So this is already like a sign that black will not do anything too committal, and then just wait if white would like to play some committal move. So queen b4 is on the board by Sarana. What is his intention? I'm not too sure. So maybe in this position I can play rook a8 maybe? Although it looks like queen e7 is a good spot for the queen, but yeah, maybe should black be worried about it? Or maybe black can play... No, the thing is after queen e6, this one is hanging, yeah? So you cannot do that unless you play queen b6, probably. And then queen e7, okay, so... Oh, maybe it's still fine after knight here. Oh man. But apart from that, what else can we do? And Parham looks like he's going to move soon. What is he gonna do? What about king f7? Just to stop queen e7 pretty much. But is it the time for king to move? And I think he did. I think he did, yeah. He just did it. King f7. Okay. Yeah, because queen e7 looks like a very good square for the white's queen. I don't know whether it is going to give white anything, but it's just, you're entering the 7th rank of your opponent's territory, and you might actually build some attack up from there. So king f7. So Parham has been just playing some prophylactic moves, and perhaps after king f7, now black is free to play the rook to a8, and then trying to create some control over the a file. Okay, let's move back to the Fidet's game, and apparently still no move yet from Yakuboev, although knight d6 looks kind of natural move to make, and I think he's still trying to calculate as much as he can. Well, he has more time on the clock, so yeah, he needs to figure things out. And the game between Grishchuk versus Yangi. Okay, now after knight f1 there is knight f5. So this is already like a offer trade, because I think you have to take it, because if you move the queen like this, then this is hanging, right? Takes this one, and takes this one. That's it. Although there is this one takes, but I think this position is better for not too sure who is better in this position. Like maybe e5 here. Okay, let's be brave. Takes, and this one. Yeah, I don't know, maybe this is it. So knight f5, if takes, how do we take it back? Probably with this pawn like this. Yeah, and the knight doesn't have anywhere to go later, and the rook might just settle on e4, provoking f3. Oh, the knight can just stop it on e3 actually. Like this position shouldn't be worse for white, although I don't think white, no, I think this is better for black. Yeah, all right, knight f5 is on the board. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on this for sure, but Yakuboev just played some move. And what did he do? He played knight c3, so he's planning to shield his king from knight d5 like this. But is this a wise option? Let's take a look with the engine. I think it's still fine. Okay, so both knight d6 and knight c3 is fine as long as you're creating some shield over the d file. So what's gonna happen after rook a d8? You just play knight d5, rook f e8, and then king d4, and then the king is just settled nicely in the center like that, covered by the knight on d5. And after queen g6, king c3, ooh, takes d5, and you cannot take it with the pawn, yeah, because it's just check here, and then I don't know, mate along the a file maybe. Oh, you're still fine, and then just keep checking like that. Because if queen here, I think it's queen here, which is I think still a draw too. Yeah, I think it's still a draw too. There's so many checks coming along the way. So knight c3, yeah, rook a d8, let's say here again, and then queen g6. Yeah, to find queen g6 in this position is pretty hard. And then king c3, and then takes. So if you take with the queen, check here. If king goes here, I think it's a check here. And then it should be mate, yeah. If here is checkmate here and then here. So if king goes here, queen check here. So you have to stop it like this. Okay, you don't want to play anything like that. But after knight c3, Fidet played rook a c8, and this allows king d4. Although the computer says that white is slightly better right now, but I think it's still very hard to judge that white suddenly is better. So king d4 is on the board, yeah, getting ready for this knight d5. So yeah, rook here, knight d5, and maybe what is the difference now? Queen b3. If queen g6, rook a c1. Yeah, you have limited option to checks. Okay, this has happened. So let's see what Fidet is going to play. And he only has 4 minutes left on the clock, so he has to play fast. I think he's going to move his queen to b3. So queen b3. Understandable, you just want to attack the pawn on c4 and potentially having some sacrifice along the d file with rook takes d5 and then forcing your opponent to take with the pawn, something like that. Okay, queen b3. What do we do in this position? Maybe it's queen d3. After check, and then queen here, and then king here, and after this, maybe just, what do we do? Even if we take this one, is fine, or we can just go here maybe. But queen b3 is still on the board. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to also find other moves apart from queen d3. Can we eventually play the rook like this? Maybe just play the rook, right? You surround your king with your pieces, try to make it more safe. What does the computer suggest actually? Yeah, rook ac1. Rook ac1 is the best move. Rook ac1, and can you imagine in this position the computer suggested to play king f8 or h6? Oh, not like that. Or even king h8 is fine as long as you don't do anything. And this is the hardest thing to do in chess, to not do anything. So h6 is what the computer suggests, and you just keep playing this position, still having the king in the center, and then just allowing your opponent to make mistakes. Okay, while this is still the last move on the board, I'd like to move back to the game between Sarana versus Maksudlu. That after king f7, Sarana play h4, followed by rook d7 and rook b1. So yeah, still not major updates on this game. Yeah, they are still just playing all these little moves, and I'm just trying to understand what is the idea behind Sarana's last move. So you just want to take on b5 apparently. So, but we've seen this position before. Yeah, maybe it's time to play queen e6, and the position before was rook e1 again, trying to protect this, but I think this is the position to play king f2, and then keeping all this idea alive to take the pawn on b5. Is okay, queen e6 is actually on the board. So will we see king f2? This is such a natural move to make. King f2, and everything is under control, and then probably next move Sarana can just take on b5. Because also if knight d6, we can think of taking it. Alright, so Sarana is still thinking. He still has lots of time on the clock, 23 minutes. Yeah, so and on the challengers, any interesting position? Yeah, not so much. So let's move back to this position. And yeah, after queen e6, did Sarana do anything? Oh, he played bishop f4. So bishop f4, yeah, I think I like it too. Now this b5 pawn is under attack. How do we stop it? So bishop f4, knight is going to take b5, takes, queen takes. Yeah, I think that, how to stop it? Or maybe black will just allow it to happen, and probably black has to try to attack something like g5 maybe. It's interesting, isn't it? Like maybe g5 takes, bishop takes, like this. So Parham has 1 minute left. Oh my, he's in time trouble right now. He has to play faster. And on the far end of the camera, it is actually the game between Predke versus Fokedov, which just finished. So let's take a look quickly what happened on their game, because we saw the position after bishop g5, and here Fokedov chose to play knight f6, de7 takes, and since now black still has one extra piece, so black just consolidated everything and then managed to put the king back into safety. And okay, now it looks like it is a normal position to play with an extra piece on the board. Of course, the task is getting easier for black, and that's why after a few moves, I think, yeah, in this position after knight d5, white just resigned, because there's nothing else to fight for in this position. Or white is just down a piece without any other compensation, because before the compensation was the king, but now the king on g8 is just pretty safe and cannot be attacked anymore. So Fokedov won the second round against Predke. It was a very nice defense by him. It was not easy to actually find all those right moves to defend the king, where it was being heavily attacked by white pieces. Okay, let's switch back to the master section, and apparently after queen b3 instead of rook hc1, Yakuboev chose to play the other rook to c1. Rook hc1 is now on the board, and then f5, trying to stop the king, or pretty much limiting the king's activity. And here rook he1, and yeah, how do we feel in this position? Because trying to understand, maybe he's trying to play queen b6 so that the king cannot go to e4, and then f3. So what do we do in this position then? I don't think white can be attacked, but also I don't think black can do anything. So probably just wait. But again, it's so hard to wait. How to wait in this position? And yeah, time is ticking. So we can see Fidit is getting a bit nervous. He has 2 minutes left on the clock, and well, this position is not easy, and he has to come up with a plan, or rather no plan at all, and then just play the position out, because can black plan anything in this position? I don't think so. So still ticking. Okay, now less than 2 minutes left for Fidit, and he still has to make 16 moves under a minute. No, under 2 minutes. 16 moves for under 2 minutes. So he's totally or officially in time trouble now. Yeah, so he has to move fast. What can he do in this position? Is moving the pawn a good idea? f5? I don't see anything actually. Or just like what computer suggested, maybe h6, king I don't know, h7, king h8, don't do anything, because the king cannot go anywhere anyway. The king can only go to e5, but it might be just weakening the king then. Okay, now it's getting closer to be under a minute. Come on, fitted. You still have 16 moves to go to the time control. I have a feeling this might be just winning for Yakuboev, just seeing the whole situation of their game, especially Fitted's time management and also the position itself. It's not so easy to evaluate that this position is just slightly better for white. 30 seconds. Oh my gosh, Fitted, you better move, man. Yeah, in this situation, as a player, I'm also going to be very nervous. If I was Yakuboev, just waiting for my opponent to play a move while his time is ticking down and then close to 0. And he decided to play rook d6 with only 5 seconds left on the clock, because now he's back to 35 seconds. And rook d6, what does it want? Probably just moving around? Yeah, but this one, I think I'd like to play rook e5 very, very fast. Like, just to control my knight in case of anything happen with rook takes d5. And indeed, that's what Yakuboev did. So, he just tried to consolidate everything. It's such a good idea, actually. And slowly from there, I think white will be trying to exchange as much as he can. Starting from the queen, for example. Just imagine that in this position, if the queens are traded, then there's nothing else to fight for black. So king h8 is already on the game. And yeah, I'm getting nervous for Fitted actually. Like, for example, what happened if I just play queen e3 in this position? The thing is, there's this one I saw, but you can always play something like this and there shouldn't be any problem. Yeah, this idea to the back rank is something to think about as well. Black cannot just freely move around the pieces and giving checks without noticing that there is a back rank checkmate. So king h8, I really like when e3 move. You're offering the trade for the queen, but also at the same time, you're setting up an attack to the back rank. Will Yakuboev play it? He has 6 minutes on the clock, so he's trying to figure this out. Or also, another question is whether this pawn is actually hanging, whether this pawn can be taken. I guess after a few moves, now the position is becoming much better for Yakuboev. So this is still the last position on the board. I think I'd like to keep on this game for a while just to see how everything pans out. Okay, so king h8, still no move yet, I guess. Yeah, from the live feed, I guess it's still Yakuboev's turn to move. Okay, it's interesting. Queen e3 is there, rook takes f5 is there. There shouldn't be anything to worry about in this position so far. What else? What about doubling the rook? No. That shouldn't be it, because c4 is hanging. c4 is hanging, so I like queen e3. And what does the computer suggest actually? Let's take a look. Rook c3, and it's already like almost +3 for white right now. Rook c3, attacking the queen. If the queen gives a check here, you don't have to worry. You just keep pushing the pawn, because if check here, for example, the king just moved back to e3, and the king is safe, everything is protected, and white's going to win. So rook c3, and then the cover side just have to play queen b1. What is the idea of queen b1? Probably just to give a check over g1. That's possible. And now queen e1. Okay, that's pretty hard. And then queen b8. Alright, all these jumps up and down with the queen. No, it is very hard to find it over the board. I would not be surprised if somehow these two players just find a totally different alternatives. So less than 5 minutes now for Yakuboev. And Fidit has to reply rather quick after Yakuboev's next move, because he only has 34 seconds left on the clock. What is he gonna do? He's reaching his rook, but he's now being hesitant. Yeah, he might actually play rook c3 because you just want to attack the queen, and also preserving the third rank for the king in case anything happen. Eventually, if, for example, in the long term, if somehow the king can run to g2, let's say, it's just GG. What does he do? What does he do? We will have to move soon. Oh, queen c3. So instead of rook c3, he played queen c3. And now it's Fidit's turn. He played queen a2. So preserving this type of ideas with checks on the back rank, and also keeping an eye over the pawn on c4. Alright, so queen a2. How do we continue this position? What about rook c2? This looks tempting to me, just to stop anything to do with queen f2. Yeah, what about rook c2 just now? And the queen has to move again. Maybe queen b1 then. And after queen b1, maybe just rook here. Although there's this check. Oh, but it's fine. This check can go. Can we just go to e3? Maybe rook d5. No. Oh, that's still winning too. Anyway, not rook c2, but queen c2. Yeah, I think this is also a nice move, yeah? Because there's no check on the king on d4. Queen c2. And where does this queen go? For sure, black shouldn't trade the queen. Black should keep the queen alive. But where does the queen go? Maybe queen a5 then. Trying to have this type of checks, although after queen c5, king d3, black is not doing well there. But where else can black do after queen c2, yeah? And I think there's some move already. Queen a3. Okay, queen a3 is on the board. Also keeping an eye on queen c5. Rook ce1. Now double up the rook to enter the back rank, while at the same time protecting the pawn on c4. Yeah, I think Fidit is going to lose this game, unfortunately. It was such a good game there. I thought he had lots of chance to pull a draw, but Yakuboev turns to be quite a tough opponent to play against. And now let's quickly check the computer. Yeah, it's still winning for white. It's +2 position for white. Rook c1 and rook d8, trying to protect the back rank that way. And how to continue? I like this little move like h4, h5, h6. Just try to attack it that way. But also a move like rook rook 1 e3 is also not a bad move. But yeah, if I could, I'd like to transpose my king to g2. Just put it on the safer place. Okay, Yakuboev has 3 minutes left. And he's about to reach something there. What did he do? He hasn't moved anything yet, but he's going to reach the queen maybe. No, is the queen able to move? It can actually move to c3, yeah? You have to keep an eye on this pawn on c4 because after check you have to go d3. Yep, so let's quickly take a look what happens in the game between Sorana versus Parham. After bishop f4 here, knight d6. Yeah, you cannot take this because of this check. And now queen c5, knight b7, queen a7, knight d6 again, queen b6, knight f5, and now queen c5. So this looks like it is hanging, but apparently after takes there might be just rook e1, and this rook might this knight might be just losing. So this cannot be taken then. So after queen c5, what do we do in this position if we were black? Because now the knight on c7 is under attack. Yeah, I think Parham has been in a tough position for some moves already, and it's easier to play as white, but somehow Parham keeps finding the defense for this position, so let's hope that he still finds another defense. Although now what to do? The knight is under attack, this one is also under attack. Is queen e7 a move? And Parham is now under 20 seconds. He has to start playing. What does he do? Did he take on e3? We'll have the move soon. Oh, and that move is the 40th move. What did he do? He take h4. Okay, and now this is the 40th move, and that's why he left and got up from the chair. And because he got another 30 minutes additional time. Alright, so now time-wise he is on a good spot. So what is not a good spot is Yakuboev versus Vidit, because they are still needing 10 moves to go to the time control. And alright, queen c3, queen a2, king d3. Now maybe trying to put the king in a better position, in a safer position. Queen g2. Yeah, try to keep maintaining the problems for white's king. And now how do we set this pawn into safety? Maybe just rook e3? I think that's the best choice. Yeah, probably just rook e3 like this, yeah? And you are stopping all the checks as well. And Yakuboev just did something. Is it rook e3? No, he played queen d2. Oh, he might be just trying to force the exchange of the queens in this type of position, maybe. Here, and queen has to go to h5. And maybe this position you just take the pawn on a7. So queen h3 is already on the board. How will Yakuboev block the check? I think it's with queen e3. Yeah, queen e3 and queen h5. And now, will Yakuboev take the pawn on a7? He's about to reach it. Yeah, I think he did. He took the pawn on a7. Okay, so... Oh, Did he do that? No, he actually played rook e7. Rook e7 is his move. So putting the rook on the 7th rank is always the principle. And yeah, I think you can take this pawn at any time anyway. But also this setting up a very nice attack on g7 later. So imagine if the queen goes to e5 right now. So h6 is I think necessary because you have to get some space for the king on h8 to breathe. So h7 might be just a square for it. And now how do we continue? Maybe it is time to play rook g1 attacking g7. This looks nice. And queen e5 or queen d4 can happen at any time. So maybe just rook g1 first now. And how are we going to stop this attack? If rook g8 like this, then maybe just play queen e5, check, and then knight here. If there's any check like this, then that's it. The king hides. But he didn't do that. He played queen g3. Okay, so he also, I mean, his intention has always been the g7 pawn. So rook g8. Rook g8. Maybe now it's rook g1, yeah? You just want to keep pressing this pawn. Also, the queen cannot go anywhere. That's the thing. The queen is stuck there. So probably to keep pressuring the g7 pawn, you just have to play rook g1 anyway. And still no move yet. 5 moves to go to the time control. He's reaching his rook. Yeah, so I think it's rook g1. Yeah, he played it. Rook g1 is on the board. And how do we stop this attack? Yeah, Fedit is totally in trouble right now. If you move the pawn, then at the very least there is this check followed by knight f6. It's a fork. Or I think we can also play knight f6 right away, and then it's attacking both the queen and also the mating attack on h7. So rook g1, is it a resignable position now? Because even like a move like this, you want to give a check, you can just let it be. There is always a knight going to c3. And Fedit is about a minute left on the clock. Once rook takes g7, I think it's GG. It's just game over. But I don't see any way to stop this attack. Okay, 45 seconds left for Fedit. Yeah, he might be suffering his first loss now. "30 seconds. Yeah, what to do? Yeah, this is always the tough moment in chess where you don't have time to think, and also at the same time, yeah, you might just resigning the game, but you don't know what to do because there's always some hope, right? There might be a chance that you miss something that you didn't initially see beforehand. 8 seconds. And are we going to see? What are we seeing? So Fedit just made a move, I think just in time before he lost the time. Okay, rook b8 is actually what he did, but again, I think we already covered that after this. And this type of checks, there's always knight here, and I don't know what he's going after. Let's say this check, knight here. To keep giving checks, you have to go here. And then king just go here, and everything is protected. So white shouldn't worry about this attack rook b8 because having the knight on c3 is very helpful. And I think Yakuboev took the g7 pawn. Yeah, he took the g7 pawn. Yeah, the only idea is rook b3, and I think Fedit just played it right now, and knight c3 is just in time. Yep, knight c3, and what is he going to do next after this? Yeah, everything is very well protected. this might be just a reasonable position, or maybe he will just try one more move by playing rook d8, and then after king c2 there's almost nothing else to think about. And yes, rook d8 is on the board, and after king c2 it should be it. Because maybe he will try rook takes, but after king takes then there is nothing else. Yeah, he took. Okay, he took. His only hope is if the queen takes this, because there is a check on e2, but after this is just nothing. Yeah, king takes c3, and I guess I'm pretty sure that he's going to resign on this note. Yeah, well, what a game. But eventually Yakuboev emerged as the better player in this game, and it was such an entertaining game. I think you would agree with me. Both players showed a really high fighting spirit, but yeah, I think the move that FIDE failed to find is actually this. Okay, this is very subtle. I don't even know the difference. Like, he played rook c8 and rook d8, where he actually has to go rook d8 and rook e8. So that's just it, and then maintain the position that way, and it should be just pretty equal. But it's very hard to judge. It's very hard to judge in that type of position. You feel like you might have something, but you didn't. So it's like what Sindarov played against Richard Rapport. It feels like white has something, but turns out white doesn't have anything. Okay, let's come back to the game between Grischuk versus Yang Yi, because it has equalized. No, it has simplified rather heavily after, I think we saw the position after knight f5 here. So bishop takes f5, takes, and queen g3, king f7, a4, rook c1, and then I will play the move a bit faster. And after this, looks like black is doing better than white, because I don't know, it looks to me black has more control, especially over the e-file. But the thing is, the knight is ready to go to e3. Yeah, if let's say in this position black plays something else and allowing the knight to e3, I think the position is going to be stabilized. So Yang Yi decided to take the knight, and then going to the major pieces endgame like this, takes, and queen b5. And black still stands better, I guess, thanks to its pieces activity. And of course, after queen b5, it is attacking rook to e2, and then trying to get to the b2 pawn. And now queen c3 is on the board, and queen c4. So Yang Yi didn't allow any counterplay with queen here. The king can hide to h6, but there's always an idea with, I don't know, queen here, or even queen f6, trying to go to f8 and then taking the pawn, something like this. So with also little time left on the clock, Yang Yi just decided to play queen c4, because in the end game, it looks like black is winning. But if you don't go to the end game, I mean the rook's end game, where can you go? Because if you move back like this, there is rook e2. So this is something that you shouldn't do. But if you takes this, and let's say you want to promote the pawn, the king is just in time. So it's about dividing the task between the king and the rook. The rook is the attacker, the king is the defender. So it's better that way. So if rook goes here, I guess, what can we do? Maybe here. So, okay, maybe I'm a bit too hasty. Okay, takes, and d5. Actually, this might be a good idea to create some counter attack. Oh, this happened. So d5 is currently the main the position on the board right now, and they just entered the second time control. They get another 30 minutes left on their clocks. Okay, so I saw Parham was walking around, wondering what's happening on their board. And after knight takes h4, e4, and b4. So this is now on the board. So I guess I have to wrap things up, and let's take a look what is the evaluation of this position. And apparently b4 is the nice move. It's a good move. Yeah, so if you take with the rook, there is knight a6, and white will be losing on the spot. If you take with the queen, then d4 is hanging, so you can just take d4 like this, de4, and then if you take this one, and then knight d5 first, attacking this. Okay, so Parham found the best move on the board then, b4, and now Sarana is thinking how to deal with this position. The best reply for Sarana is to take b4 with the queen and allowing the fork on d5, because that is still going to be quite an equalish position. And on the game between Grischuk versus Yangi, this might be just also another equal position. So okay, king f7 should be fine, d6. So we're actually seeing the best computer line here. And after here, rook d6, b5, and then what happened after rook b6? Oh, you have c3, b takes c3, and then rook c4, and then h4. What happened if taking rook c3, and still h4? You're not worried about this one, yeah? Because here you have to this h5, very nice. Whenever king takes, there's always rook check and then take h7. So let's say I go here, h6, but this is pretty hard. This rook endgame is not easy to understand. Oh, and then after rook here, rook a7. Okay, so you always have some idea one way or the other. That is to attack the pawn on the queen side, or try to maximize your chances on the king side as well and use it as a deflection. Alright, so I think that's pretty much it for today's games, and we've seen so many interesting games in the master section and also in the challenger section. One of the leaders of the master section, Abdusattorov, managed to get a draw against Mamedyarov, and it will be depending on how Sarana is playing against Parham. If Sarana wins, then he's going to be the sole leader, but if he's making a draw, then he's still joining. Actually, there will be three people joining the lead, right? Because Yakuboev won and he drew yesterday, so far we have two leaders then. Abdusattorov and Yakuboev are both on 1.5, and Sarana is still playing against Parham, and this has happened. Queen takes b4 and d takes e4. So if Sarana draw, then there will be a three-way lead, also depending on the game between Grischuk versus Yangi, but I predict that game will end with another draw. But well, Yangi drew yesterday, so if he wants to join the lead, then he has to win the game, but it looks like the rook endgame will be just drawn. Okay, and yeah, it's been so nice commentating, and today we saw many interesting stuff, variations and preparation as well. So hopefully tomorrow it will be as entertaining as it is today. So thanks again for watching, and stay tuned because tomorrow we'll come back on the same time, same place. I've been Irene Sukandar, and see you again tomorrow. Bye bye.